I'm listening to you, Michael. You have control where you can click on different things and the go live button worked? Okay, good. All right. Well, I'm standing by. I was just talking to Twitch chat over here, but I am listening to what you're saying, so. So I'm having to go and mute myself in Discord. I'm talking with Chris G. All right, I gotta listen for my cue because Chris G is starting the NASA Spaceflight.
Good morning from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. Still the Air Force Station. It will become the Space Force Station later this month, but you are looking live at the Atlas V rocket rolling out from its vertical integration facility at Slick 41 on its way to the launch pad for tomorrow evening's scheduled launch of the Solar Orbiter mission at 11:03 p.m. Sunday local time. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to wherever you are around the world watching this. I'm Chris Gebhardt, the Assistant Managing Editor of NASA Spaceflight, and I am live here at Cape Canaveral, and my colleague Doss is live with us from the Wallops flight facility at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport in Virginia, covering the pre-launch activities for the Antares and Cygnus NG-13 mission. We'll be checking in with him in just a few moments, but wanted to start and bring you guys the Atlas rolling out here from its vertical integration facility. Let me go ahead and zoom on in, because this is one of the really unique configurations of the Atlas, and you can see right there that single solid rocket booster, just one, an amazing amount of asymmetrical thrust that the Atlas is able to handle and correct for as it power slides off the launch pad and ascends into space tomorrow. It's only the 6th time that this particular configuration of the Atlas, known as the 411, meaning a 4-meter payload fairing up there at the top containing solar orbiter, a single solid rocket booster, and a single engine Centaur upper stage for this particular mission. And you can see that the Atlas is kind of stopped there after it initially came out of the vertical integration facility as they prepare for the final alignment and push out to the launch pad. Here, it is a gorgeous morning here at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, and weather is looking good for tomorrow's anticipated launch. We have, just very briefly before we hear about the launch, is even though there's a 2-hour launch window tomorrow that opens at 11:03 p.m. and stretches until 1:03 a.m. Sunday into Monday here local time, they don't have every single minute of that launch window to actually launch. Because this is an interplanetary mission, we're actually launching to Venus. Even though it's a solar mission studying the sun, we're actually launching to Venus to use Venus for gravity assists and solar system plane changes for this mission. So because of that interplanetary window that we have to hit, it requires by-the-minute adjustments to how the Atlas V's trajectory will actually be flown Sunday evening as it launches this mission. So because of that, instead of building 120 different launch trajectories for every single minute of the window, they only built 25. So there's one instantaneous launch opportunity every 5 minutes within the 2-hour launch window. Within the 2-hour launch window, and that's the same for tomorrow, and it's the same for if for some reason we can't launch tomorrow, if they have to delay for any of their backup days. But the weather is also looking extremely good, an 80% chance of acceptable weather conditions, with the primary concern being any cumulus clouds or light precipitation that might pop up over the Atlantic and blow inward or be pushed inward by the predominant wind field. tomorrow. But again, if you are just joining us, I'm Chris Gebhardt, and I am live at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, where we are looking at the Atlas V rocket rolling out from its vertical integration facility to its launch pad for Solar Orbiter. Up top, the tippity top, the pointed part is the payload fairing containing Solar Orbiter. Down below it, the white cylindrical piece is the Centaur upper stage, and then the gold part down toward the bottom is the Atlas V booster itself, and the one little strap-on solid rocket booster off to the right-hand side of your screen. And the large gray structure you see behind it is the Atlas umbilical tower that bears the words ULA. And as the rollout continues, the rocket stopped right now in its rollout process, but as it continues, it's moving again. There we go. See, all it takes is me saying that it has stopped, and it will begin moving. So as this continues to roll out to the launch pad, we are actually hoping to bring you and go up live to DOS. Michael, let me know on our back channel here if we are good to go on that handover or not. So in 30 seconds, we're going to switch on over and hand off to DOS, who is at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, about 1,000 miles north of the Cape, for the Antares mission, because Antares and Cygnus are actually launching to the International Space Station tomorrow at 17:39 Eastern Time here in the United States, 5.5 hours before the Atlas V and Solar Orbiter launch from here at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, an extremely rare double header off the east coast of the United States. We're covering both. We're going to bring you live streams of both, and we thought it would be really cool to bounce back and forth today between the Cape and Wallops over the next several hours for you. So buckle up. It's going to be a good live stream and a good event for everyone here today. And before I kick it over to DOS, I just want to say thank you all for watching around the world, wherever you are. If you have any questions about the Atlas V or the Solar Orbiter mission, or Antares, Cygnus, and its NG-13 mission to the station, go ahead and throw those questions up in chat, and we will go ahead and get this. We'll go ahead and answer them for you live on air. And we super appreciate all of your support as we bring you these activities live. So now I'm going to hand it on over.
All right, let me know if you can hear me here in back of the studio. Next spaceflight, Michael, let me know if my audio is working. When you tell me that it's working, I'll actually start to explain where I am. There's a different NASA logo behind, actually the same NASA logo behind me, but not at Cape Canaveral. So am I good here, Michael? Am I good to go, or can you not hear me? I do terribly hope that you're able to hear me right now. I'm just going to assume that you can hear me. All right, good. We're good to go on audio. All right. So I'm DOS, and for the first time ever, we've got 2 live cameras going on the NASA spaceflight stream right here. I'm over 800 miles north of Cape Canaveral, where Chris G was just talking to you from. I'm up at Wallops, and behind me, I've got the Antares HIF. That's the horizontal integration facility for the Antares missions. Antares, of course, launching NG missions now, the Northrop Grumman commercial resupply missions. And in the HIF, you can't see it because the doors are closed. I'm not allowed to go inside of it with all the transmitters for the camera because NG-14 is in there right now. Now, NG-14 isn't launching yet. I'm out here at Wallops because NG-13 is currently over on the pad. A little bit later today, I'm going to take the camera setup over here, and we're going to go over to the pad during the remote setup, and we'll do the same sort of Q&A that we usually do for the SpaceX, all the other launches that Chris G does from the Cape. So we've got me, DOS, out here at Wallops, covering the Antares NG-13 commercial resupply going up to the ISS. That launches tomorrow, a couple hours before for the Solar Orbiter, and you're going to have Chris G down at the Cape. I know Chris G is still covering the rollout of Solar Orbiter on that Atlas there. So the first time we've done this, I hope that it's working. I literally drove up to Wallops simply because I wanted to cut from Chris G at Cape Canaveral to Das here at Wallops, back to you, Chris G. So again, look for me a little bit later, around 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. I will have our camera set up over here next to the pad, just a couple of 100 feet away from the Antares that is taking NG-13 up to the space station. But let's go ahead and kick it back to Chris down at the Cape. We just wanted to make sure this works, and I hope I'll see y'all later here on the NASA Spaceflight channel. I mean, I guess we could just keep talking, because Michael's supposed to switch the...
And thanks, Das, for that update. And as we said, like, this is a rare opportunity to bring you two different rocket campaigns and launch campaigns going on at the same time. So Das, we'll be sure to check back in with you after Atlas V and Solar Orbiter reach the launch pad here at Cape Canaveral, and then we'll kick it back to you because we've got some exciting things going on up at Wallops too. Das is going to be able to answer all your questions at about 11 o'clock Eastern time in about 45 minutes from now. But we're going to keep it here, and we're going to keep it on Solar Orbiter, which is rolling out behind me right there, to its launch pad here. So I'm going to go ahead and step off camera, and we'll zoom back in on the rocket, and then we'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about the mission, because it is a really cool mission, and it's a cool interactive and collaborative mission between NASA and the European Space Agency. It is primarily a European Space Agency mission if you look at all of the press information and how this mission is being touted on social media. It's the ESA Solar Orbiter mission, but NASA provided the launch vehicle as part of their contribution to this mission. So the European Space Agency did not pay for the Atlas V rocket. NASA actually did. There are NASA instruments on board Solar Orbiter as well as instruments and collaborations from all of the European Space Agency nations. So it's a very important heliophysics or sun studying mission. Solar Orbiter is actually going to be the first time that we are able to see and take pictures of the sun's poles. And if that sounds odd to you, like, wait, how have we never been able to see the sun yet? The sun's poles, yeah, that is a kind of a surprising thing, considering all of the various missions like SOHO and the Solar Dynamics Orbiter and Parker Solar Probe, the really famous ones that are still active and still giving us a lot of information about the element of our solar system without which we wouldn't exist. But we've never actually flung a spacecraft out of the ecliptic plane high enough before to actually see the sun's two poles, and Solar Orbiter will be the first time that that's going to happen. And you might be asking, well, how does it happen, right? That it must take a lot of propellant to change an orbital inclination even of the sun, and you'd be correct in that, but Solar Orbiter is not actually going to use propellant to change its orbital inclination. After it is dropped off on its Earth escape heliocentric orbit or sun-centric orbit, it will be on course to intercept Venus, and it will do multiple flybys of Venus and Earth, and those gravity assists will both change its orbit to allow it to get closer to the sun at perihelion. Its closest approach to the sun will actually be inside of the orbit of Mercury. And it will also use those gravity assists to change its orbital inclination of the sun, and that's how it's going to be able to see the sun's poles. And this will take place over the course of about 3.5 years to get into its science orbit. So 3.5 years from launch tomorrow is when it will actually enter its science orbit. It will start collecting science before that and data before that, but 3.5 years to get into its primary science orbit, and then about 6.5 to 7 years of a primary mission. So the entirety of the mission is slated to last about 10 years. That's how much the spacecraft has been built to withstand. But European Space Agency officials were very clear yesterday that they do expect the the probe itself to be viable after that 10 years and have enough propellant on board for the minor course corrections that it needs to do to still be controllable. Because just like the Parker Solar Probe that NASA launched in 2018 to study the sun, the solar orbiter also has a heat shield, and it has to keep all of its instruments behind that heat shield because, as they said yesterday, getting that close to the sun, power is not the problem, heat becomes the problem. So there's a huge heat shield that all of the instruments actually reside behind. But a really cool thing that's different from Parker Solar Probe is that while this particular spacecraft on solar orbiter has to always keep its heat shield facing the sun, it has little doors on the heat shield that will open during the 10-day phases every time solar orbiter swings through its perihelion or closest approach to the sun. And those doors on the heat shield will actually allow the instruments and the cameras to see the sun. And that's how it's going to collect all of its data. And then there are really complex heat rejection systems on those instruments that will channel all the heat that they'll be exposed to when the heat shield doors are open outward and away from them to keep them safe and keep them at optimal operating temperatures. So a really, really cool and fascinating mission here. Of note, the twin solar array wings on solar orbiter are the same solar array designs that were used on the European Space Agency's Bepi-Colombo mission to Mercury, which launched on an Ariane 5 rocket in 2018. So a lot of good synergy there between European Space Agency inner solar system missions, and a lot of good synergy too between NASA and the European Space Agency in terms of Parker Solar Probe and the solar orbiter. Another really cool thing, and then we'll start taking some of your questions. And Michael, if we do have questions, if you could throw that up, if you could throw them up into the into our control center net here, so that I can see them. We'll go ahead and take your questions. So if you've got questions about the Atlas V, about solar orbiter, about this mission, if you've got questions about Antares or Cygnus or the NG-13 resupply mission up to the International Space Station, go ahead and throw those up in chat too, and we will go ahead and get them answered for you. But yes, so there's a lot of good synergy here, right? It is an international mission, a huge mission of cooperation and science between these two agencies. And as they were quick to point out yesterday, right, NASA and ESA have very similar scientific goals when it comes to the sun, when it comes to heliophysics and understanding how the sun creates the solar wind, which dominates the space weather patterns, how the sun creates these coronal mass ejections and injections of energetic particles that, if directed at Earth, could potentially be damaging to our technology. We have to fortify our space technology, including the International Space Station and the human presence on board, that we have to fortify them so that if they get hit by coronal mass ejections and these energetic particles, that they will survive. So a lot of good synergy here, because NASA and ESA could be paying to do all of this separately from one another and overlapping in the science, or they could work together and get the same information that both agencies want and that the worldwide heliophysics community want, at a lesser price for each particular organization. And one other really quick and interesting fact about Solar Orbiter, because it is a first of its kind event, all of the instruments on board Solar Orbiter can actually talk to each other in real time. So as it's doing these 10-day perihelion dives toward the sun for for its science mission, if one instrument sees something that's that it thinks is really interesting, it can instantly communicate to the other instruments on Solar Orbiter and say, hey, I'm seeing this thing that's really cool, go look at it too right now, because the sun and the inner heliosphere is such a dynamic and ever-changing environment that you can't wait close to a year or half a year later for the next swing by the sun, because that event might not be there and you might not be diving toward the same part of the sun. So a really cool and exciting interconnected instrumentation suite on board Solar Orbiter as well. And I'm going to zoom back out here as we start taking your questions, because the Atlas is actually really close to its launch pad here. So, but here's our first question. Thanks to, I don't even know how to pronounce that. HDHNSWK is the username. I don't think you can pronounce that, but or at least I'm not even going to try. But this person wants to know, is asking, he's not sure how NASA selects the launch vehicle. ULA are known for their accuracy and escape trajectories. SpaceX are also known for LEO launches. I guess that's why they went with ULA. That's the question. It's kind of a yes or no answer to that. So in looking, when this mission was first proposed back in 2011 and approved, and NASA knew that part of its contribution was going to be providing the launch vehicle through NASA's Launch Services program, they put out a call for proposals, asking the various U.S. rocket companies to submit proposals on how they would launch it and how they would do it. Now, a huge difference between the Falcon family of rockets and the Atlas V is how the payloads are integrated. The Falcon 9 goes through horizontal payload integration, where the whole rocket is horizontal and the payload fairing is popped on, and the payload is popped onto the top of the rocket. Atlas V is a vertical integration coming out of its integration facility. In this wide shot on the right-hand side of the screen, you can actually see LC-39A and the lightning towers of LC-39B making a cameo appearance today. Something we're not usually allowed to show you, but the angles just happen to line up, so we are allowed today. But yeah, so NASA puts out those proposals, they get those proposals back, and they evaluate them based on what the mission need is, and things like that. And ULA does have great accuracy in hitting these interplanetary launch windows and doing these Earth escape injections. SpaceX to date has only done one Earth escape trajectory launch, that being the first flight of the Falcon Heavy rocket, which inserted the Tesla Roadster into a Mars distance heliocentric or sun orbit. So in this case, when NASA reviewed all of the proposals, the Atlas V they felt was the best choice for this particular mission, and ULA in making that bid looked at the specifics for what Solar Orbiter is, what its mass is, where it's going, how it has to get there, and when it has to get there, and decided that the best way to do that was to have this really unique and interesting configuration of the Atlas known as the 411 with the single strap-on side-mounted solid rocket booster. So we have another question from Mad Hatter. Love the username there. Will Solar Orbiter be able to give us any early warning of solar flares, coronal mass ejections due to its onboard burst comm system for imaging? And what would latency due to the elliptical orbit be? Okay, those are all really great and fascinating questions. So let's take the first one. Will Solar Orbiter be able to give us an early warning about solar flares? It's a great question. It's not specifically what it is designed to do, but of course, if it happens to be looking, and it's only looking at the sun with its instruments for 10-day periods every single orbit. So it's not a constant observation mission of the sun like the Solar Dynamics Orbiter or SOHO missions or things like that. Those two are really our early warning systems for coronal mass ejections. They are looking, we have a fleet of 3 spacecraft that are constantly looking at all portions of the sun, so we get a full disk image of the sun at its looking at it from an equatorial line of sight. And those are the spacecraft that really give us, they see the coronal mass ejections happening instantly and give us that data about where are they going, where did they erupt from the sun, are they a threat to Earth, or our spacecraft fleet at Mars or Jupiter or the New Horizons spacecraft out in the Kuiper Belt. Those are the ones that really do that. But again, if Solar Orbiter just happens to be looking at it could see it, but it's not what it's designed to do. What this mission, in conjunction with Parker Solar Probe, is really designed to do is help us understand the underlying mechanisms of why coronal mass ejections happen, how they form, and to really help us understand how space weather is generated. So basically, think of this mission and the Parker Solar Probe as the early versions of our weather satellites that are so integral to our life here on Earth, right? Where it really took weather satellites in orbit of Earth to understand how hurricanes form and how they are steered through high pressure and low pressure systems and ridges and frontal systems and all of that give us the accuracy in reporting that give us the accuracy in being able to determine, okay, all of these conditions are present in the atmosphere, which means there's a high likelihood of really severe tornadic storms, or snowstorms being formed, or the jet streams dipping, or things like that. Think of Solar Orbiter as that precursor in helping us understand how space weather forms, so that our space weather prediction models can become more accurate, especially as we want to commercialize low Earth orbit, and as SpaceX and NASA want to push out again permanently for permanent human presences beyond low Earth orbit around the moon and at Mars. That's a really good way to think of this mission and Parker Solar Probe. In that, let's see, so it's onboard comms, a burst comm system for imaging. Yeah, I mean, this goes back to like how the instruments can talk to one another. So if one instrument happens to see a coronal mass ejection starting to form, it can trigger the other instruments and go, you need to look at this, you need to look at this right now. Like, we're really close, we're in prime position to see how these things form and how the solar wind is affected and generated as well. It's highly elliptical orbit, so there will be, whoops, sorry. That's my onboard alarm to remind me to take medication if I haven't already, which I haven't, so I'll have to remember to do that in the afternoon. Its highly elliptical orbit will change how it communicates with Earth and when it can communicate with Earth. So when it's doing these 10-day scientific observations, if Earth, because the instruments are facing the sun, but all the communication antennas are facing the exact opposite way, if Earth happens to be at a point in its orbit and at the same moment that it's facing all those communication antennas, we should get pretty good communication with Solar Orbiter at that point through all of the tracking stations and everything in the Deep Space Network around the world. But if we happen to be on the other side of the sun or we're not in direct contact, we'll have to wait for a data downlink after it completes that swing by the sun. And the elliptical orbit doesn't really directly affect it doesn't really directly affect the communication latency. It's more where in that elliptical orbit is it compared to where Earth is in its orbit, because that elliptical orbit, the actual aphelion or farthest point in its orbit from the sun, is 0.9 astronomical units, and Earth is roughly 1 astronomical unit. So there could be moments when it's really, really close to Earth, and there could be moments when it's on the opposite side of the sun from Earth. The city of Memphis Locomotive, welcome, wants to know what makes Solar Orbiter different from the Parker Solar Probe. That's an excellent question. So they are fundamentally trying to answer some of the same questions about how does the sun control and generate the heliosphere. And the heliosphere is the region where the solar wind is the dominant force in the medium between the planets. We don't have great knowledge of how the heliosphere is formed, how the solar wind is formed, how the solar wind particles are rapidly accelerated within the corona of the sun. So they are fundamentally trying to answer some of the very same questions as one another, working in conjunction with different instruments. There are instruments that you could call sister instruments between the two, but they also have very different instruments as well to help answer those questions. So they're really trying to work together. But one thing that's very, very, very different is that Solar Orbiter is trying to observe and answer these questions about the corona and where the solar wind and the heliosphere is generated by looking in at it from the outside, looking in to the corona from outside of the corona, where Parker's solar probe is literally diving into and through the corona once or twice a year, depending on, because its orbit isn't exactly half a year, it's a little bit more than that, as will solar orbiters. So you know, one's looking down and in on the sun and trying to see how the sun's poles and the magnetic field that's generated by the sun affects the corona, affects solar weather, affects the generation of the heliosphere, while Parker's solar probe is on a more equatorial line of sight to the sun and diving through and into the corona to try to literally see what is happening in this region as I fly through it. So it's analogous to so think of Solar Orbiter as if it were an Earth orbiting mission looking down at Earth's oceans and trying to understand the currents of Earth's oceans from up above looking down, whereas Parker's solar probe would be a submarine actually plowing through the ocean and plowing through the ocean currents to see what's happening within them. That's a good Earth-based analogy for what the two are trying to do, while they fundamentally try to answer some of the same questions and bring us a better understanding for our space weather predictions, because space weather actually doesn't just affect our satellites in orbit, it can affect launch vehicles as well. The Atlas V rocket, which you're looking at right now as it nears completion of its rollout, part of the launch commit criteria is looking at solar radiation and the electrical charge of the solar wind after it gets out of Earth's atmosphere. And there could be moments when that solar background radiation and the electrical charge from the solar wind are in violation of how of the maximum limits that are allowed for the Atlas V's electrical and computer systems. So it's not just the satellites in orbit we have to worry about with solar weather, it's rocket launches too that come into play for there. And Gene and Rachel, Space Padre Island, how are you guys? Glad you are watching from Boca Chica. Gene and Rachel are awesome people covering and really doing a great job of from the local population of bringing all of us these amazing updates of SpaceX's Starship construction out at their South Texas launch site. Really, really great people. Thank you guys for watching. They want to know what is the launch weather percentage looking like. So I'll go ahead and actually answer that for both of our missions that are scheduled to launch tomorrow. So we'll start with this one. So this one with Solar Orbiter, we have an 80% chance of acceptable weather here at Cape Canaveral in Florida for the Atlas V launch throughout the duration of its window. The primary concerns will be large cumulus clouds that develop on the Atlantic and push on shore, and any associated rain showers that are embedded within them, but not a high percentage chance of that interfering with launch in the 2-hour-long launch window that we have. Antares, 800 miles north of us here, which will be launching 5.5 hours earlier than the Atlas, has a 95% chance of acceptable weather from the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, and I love that name because it acronyms to Mars, the Mars Range in Virginia. I love that. So both are looking absolutely excellent in terms of weather percentages for tomorrow. If both end up scrubbing, or either ends up scrubbing and needing its backup day, the Atlas V percentage actually drops a little bit to 70% chance of acceptable weather on Monday night for its backup day, and the Antares actually drops down to like 55% chance of acceptable weather. So tomorrow, Sunday evening at 17:39 Eastern, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 0, or midnight 39 UTC time, for Antares, and then 5.5 hours later, 23:03 local time here at the Cape, or 4:03 UTC time for the Atlas. Both are looking absolutely gorgeous for their weather. So let's talk a little bit while we're here about how these two rockets are actually able to launch off the east coast of the United States within that short amount of period from each other, because there was actually a lot of discussion between United Launch Alliance and Northrop Grumman and the Eastern Range here in Florida, which also controls some of the assets for Atlas, as well as having to shut down some assets that are needed for Atlas ahead of time so that they don't interfere with Antares' communication with the Bermuda Tracking Station. So the Bermuda Tracking Station is used by the Eastern Range for missions that go northeast from the Cape and the Kennedy Space Center. But Atlas is actually going east-southeast from here tomorrow night on its launch trajectory, and does not actually need the Bermuda Tracking Station, which is great because that's the one tracking station that Antares uses once it passes downrange of the communications facilities at Wallops. So Antares really needed Bermuda, Atlas doesn't need Bermuda, so there was therefore no conflict in the number of tracking stations that the two needed. So that was a huge hurdle that was cleared in terms of the two missions not conflicting with one another. But here at Cape Canaveral, there are actually tracking assets and communication assets that are needed for the Atlas's destruct system, because the Atlas V has a manual destruct system where they have to actually send a command to trigger the flight termination system on Atlas if something should go horribly wrong. Of course, we don't expect that to happen, but we always need that backup to protect land and people and sea assets and air assets if something were to go wrong. And those radio frequency communicators and dishes actually have to be turned off so they don't interfere with Antares' communication systems going to the Bermuda Tracking Station. So what they're going to actually do tomorrow is they're going to pull up all of those transceiver and receiver and radio signal dishes here at the Cape earlier than they normally would, go through all of their checkouts and communicating with the Atlas to make sure they're connected and make sure they're talking to each other. And once all of that's good, they're going to turn them all off here at the Cape for the Antares launch. And once Antares has launched and is safely in orbit, they'll turn all of those assets here at the Cape back on and then redo those comm checks with the Atlas to make sure that everything is still good. And that's how the two ranges are actually going to support and work with one another to make sure that Atlas and Antares both get their chance to launch on Sunday. And if it's ever happened before, it's been a really long time since something from Wallops is launching at the same time or near the same time as something is launching from here at Cape Canaveral. The whole question of interference and how these two are able to launch at the same time would be very different if Atlas were taking a more northerly trajectory out of here and needed the Bermuda Tracking Station as well. That would then have resulted in NASA, since they're both NASA missions, NASA having to decide which one gets priority. And to be blunt about it, interplanetary missions that are trying to hit these short interplanetary launch windows, the interplanetary launch window to Venus is actually only open until the 20th of February before they'd have to stand down for 8.5 months before that window opens again. So interplanetary missions tend to get, tend to definitely get the benefit there if there is a pending range conflict, but thankfully we do not have to deal with that. And Warhawk Me, thanks so much for the super chat there. We really appreciate it, and for all of you watching, we really appreciate you watching from around the world, wherever you are in chat. Go ahead and tell us where you are, where you're watching from. It's always great to see, people from Australia, people from India, people from the Middle East and Europe, and South America, and all the continents watching these things and coming together as a community, because that's what space is all about. It's about, oh, hang on, Rich is trying to show me something that I think is, yes, so So my colleague Nathan Barker is actually on the Starfleet Tours boat just offshore. We can see him. He's taking video and photography of the rollout from out at sea in the Atlantic Ocean. Unfortunately, we couldn't give him a camera to take out with him, or I think Doss's head would have exploded if we tried to do a 3-camera live stream of all these different events. But we are covering the rollout here from multiple different angles, and that's what Richard was trying to show me there, a picture of Nate taking a picture of the rocket, which is always cool. But yeah, if you've got any other questions, please throw them up in chat. Again, if they're about the Atlas V, if they're about Solar Orbiter, if they're about Antares or Cygnus or Northrop Grumman or ULA or ESA, throw them on up here. Mordecus, thanks so much for the super chat. You know, really appreciate it. Thank you to 569 Tramp for the super chat support as well. Watching from the Ozarks. Awesome. So let's talk. Well, we've got a little bit more time here before we've got about 15 minutes here before we have to throw it up to Wallops and DOS for the next portion of our stream, which will focus entirely on Antares and Cygnus for a little while, and then I'll be back a little later in the stream and we'll do a sort of historical tour and conversation about Cape Canaveral and the Kennedy Space Center and the various launch pads here as well, and then we'll throw it back to DOS, who will be at the launch pad. So again, multi-hour live stream here, bringing you these 2 missions. Stick with us, both are super important. This one for heliophysics and our ability to understand space weather and international cooperation between NASA and the European Space Agency, and the one DOS is covering, super important, taking a bunch of scientific experiments to better humanity up to the International Space Station. From Virginia. But let's talk about the Atlas, because the Atlas is a very weird configuration, right? If you're just joining our stream, I'm Chris Gebhardt, Assistant Managing Editor of NASASpaceflight, here at Cape Canaveral, covering the rollout of the Atlas V rocket with Solar Orbiter. My colleague DOS is 800 miles north at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport in Wallops, Virginia, covering the Antares and Cygnus launch preparations for tomorrow. But let's talk real quick about the Atlas configuration, because it's super weird and it's super cool, and it's the only rocket in the world and the only rocket configuration in the world where it does a power slide off the launch pad at ignition and liftoff. So the configuration of the Atlas that you're looking at is the 411, and what that means, since it's at the pad now, so the 4 in that refers to the payload fairing, a 4-meter diameter payload fairing encapsulating the solar orbiter. The first one in the 411 numbering sequence refers to the number of solid rocket boosters that the Atlas has, and that can be anywhere between 0 and 5. In this case, it has 1, and that creates a huge amount of asymmetrical thrust for the first 90 seconds of launch. We'll talk about how the Atlas actually compensates for that in a minute, because the final one in the sequence refers to the number of engines on the Centaur upper stage, the long white cylindrical part of the rocket centered in frame there. So let's talk about this sequence, because it is really a really cool sequence. So the RD-180 ignition will receive its ignition command start sequence about 1.8 seconds prior to T0. And the solid rocket booster will light about 1 second after T0. And when that booster lights, it will push the Atlas off center line of its launch pad, and that's what we refer to as the power slide off the launch pad. As the rocket rises vertically through the lightning towers and the wires that are strung between the various towers there. And then Atlas will perform a pitch and roll maneuver to put itself onto the proper azimuth or trajectory for the launch to go east-southeast out of Cape Canaveral. But to compensate for that huge asymmetric thrust, because while it's okay to power slide off the launch pad at first as it rises vertically through those lightning protection system towers and wires, it can't keep power sliding the whole time it's launching and the solid rocket is lit and burning. And this is where Atlas V's thrust vector control, the gimbaling of the RD-180 main engine on the Atlas, comes in really handy. The RD-180 has a really wide gimbaling range and thrust vector control range, and they can actually angle and gimbal the RD-180 engine so much that it compensates perfectly for the asymmetrical thrust of the solid rocket booster and flies it straight and narrow after it clears the lightning towers. It is the only rocket in the world that can fly with a single solid strap-on solid rocket booster like that, with huge amounts of asymmetrical thrust. It is not the only rocket or famous rocket that has had large amounts of asymmetrical thrust, though. The Space Shuttle for 30 years had 2 solid rocket boosters and 3 liquid-fueled main engines offset from the center line of the center of thrust from the vehicle's solid rocket boosters. So the main engines also had to do a large amount of gimbaling on the shuttle during solid rocket booster phase of flight to compensate for that asymmetrical thrust as well. But the Atlas certainly takes the cake with just 1 solid rocket. Very unique configuration. It has this will be the 82nd flight of an Atlas V rocket, and only the 6th time that this particular configuration with a single solid rocket booster has flown. So a really, really cool mission. What we can expect to see from the Atlas on Saturday is and My Own Destiny and Mr. Dave, thanks for the super chat support again. We really super appreciate it, and we love bringing all of this to you, and it's your guys' support, not just watching the stream, but it's support like this that helps us ensure that we'll be able to do this on a regular basis. So what we can expect, and then we've got a couple more questions that I'll get to as well here, including a good one about Vulcan coming up too. What we can expect is after liftoff, when the solid lights, Atlas will at first climb vertically, or as close to vertical as it can with that asymmetrical thrust. It will then pitch and roll down range and head east-southeast from Cape Canaveral. The single solid rocket booster will burn for 90 seconds before burning out, but unlike other Atlas missions and unlike other rockets that as soon as the solid rocket strap-ons burn out, they separate, the Atlas 411 configuration actually holds on to that booster after burnout and doesn't jettison it until about 2 minutes, 2 seconds or so into flight. And that has to do with the protection of land and sea assets. At 90 seconds into flight, the Atlas is not that far downrange from its launch site and land here at Cape Canaveral. So they have to hold on to that booster to reach range safety limits, so when they pop it off and separate it, it splashes down safely, destructively, but safely in the Atlantic Ocean and doesn't pose a risk to land. So that's why they held on to it. The Atlas booster itself and the RD-180 will burn for just over 4 minutes before shutting down and separating, at which point the single-engine Centaur upper stage will ignite and continue taking Solar Orbiter to its initial parking orbit. They'll reach that parking orbit about 12 minutes after liftoff, at which point the Centaur engine will shut down, and they will be in a 236 by 203 kilometer parking orbit around Earth. They'll coast for about 30 minutes, and then the Centaur engine will reignite and burn for what is known as the Earth Escape heliocentric orbit injection, which is a long-winded way of saying at the end of that burn, Solar Orbiter will be going fast enough that it will escape Earth's gravity well, and it will be in a sun-centric orbit on its way to intercept Venus in a few months. So that's what we can expect from the launch phase tomorrow. Now, as we look at the tower here, because Slick 41, which we're looking at here, is a multi-purpose launch pad, just like pad 39A, which is just off screen. There we go, which is just on screen to your right there real quick. because both of them are crew launch pads, but also satellite launch pads, you can see the crew tower and the crew access arm for Starliner behind the Atlas. None of those systems will be used for our launch of Solar Orbiter tomorrow, because this pad, just like 39A, can do both uncrewed and crewed launches as well. But the infrastructure for crew has to be there all the time. So Hendrik has a question. Will the Vulcan first stage support asymmetrical solid configurations? I believe United Launch Alliance has said no, that Vulcan with the BE4 engine from Blue Origin, which is what will power the Vulcan first stage, does not have the same gimbaling and thrust vector control range as the RD-180. So Vulcan can fly with 0, 2, 4, or 6 strap-on solid rocket boosters in its configuration, but I believe they did say that it can't do the asymmetrical 1 solid rocket booster just because of that gimbaling, the inability to gimbal as much and correct for that thrust offset as the Atlas can. But that is an absolutely great question. And thanks again. I know I missed some people on Super Chat. Thanks so much for Michael and Chris for putting together that the full list. So thanks to Felix, Warhawk, Mordicus, 569 Tramp, Mad Hatter, Nick, and Mr. Dave, and My Own Destiny. We really appreciate the support that you guys give us. That you all give us. We really love doing this. It's our passion, and we're happy that you guys share that and want to support us in that again. So we've got a few minutes left here before we're going to kick it back to DAS. So if you have any other questions about United Launch Alliance, about Atlas V, about Solar Orbiter, about NASA, about ESA, about anything resembling this mission, or if you have questions about spaceflight in general, because in about 6 minutes we're going to kick it back to DAS at Wallops. He's going to be with you for the next hour, and then around noon Eastern time or 1700 UTC, we're going to kick it back to me, and we're going to do a sort of historical tour of the launch pads and everything here at Kennedy Space Center and the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. So if you have any questions about that, throw them up into chat. Michael's keeping track of all of this, and a huge shout out to Michael. He's not on our stream, but he is the person behind the scenes pushing all the buttons and making this all possible, and works seamlessly, cutting back and forth between me and DAS. He also is the one you saw earlier in the stream, the graphic of the Atlas that popped up while I was talking about the configuration. Huge shout out, and make sure you say thanks to Michael for doing all the behind the scenes work on this one as well. But right now Atlas is actually at the launch pad. It's in its launch position on its mount. So what they are doing now is finalizing the elements of rollout, getting everything locked down and clamped down, and then they will start actually doing the physical hookup connections of the gaseous nitrogen and helium lines, and the RP1 propellant lines, the liquid oxygen propellant lines, and the liquid hydrogen propellant lines, and all the data and umbilical connections to get Atlas hooked up to the pad so that they have good telemetry and good readings from it in the Launch Control Center, and then obviously validating all of those propellant hookups as well ahead of fueling. But let's actually talk a little bit about the Atlas fueling process, because it's very different from other rockets. So after it arrives at the pad, actually later today, they will go ahead and load all of the RP1 rocket grade kerosene into the first stage of the Atlas V booster. It is room temperature RP1, so it doesn't boil off. So they can pump all of that RP1 kerosene into the rocket later today, and then it's fueled, and that part of it is ready to go for launch tomorrow. So when they come in on launch day tomorrow, all they have to do is load the cryogenics, the liquid oxygen into the first stage and the Centaur upper stage, and the liquid hydrogen into the Centaur upper stage. But that's how the Atlas V actually fuels. Very different from other rockets, which usually fuel up everything actually on launch day. So really cool fueling process, and different fueling process there. So Galen Paez, I hope I said your last name right, apologies if I did not, is asking, do we ever get out to West Texas to cover Blue Origin launches live? We have not to date, but that is something that we would love to do if Blue Origin is amenable to that. But we don't actually see but Blue Origin doesn't actually send out media accreditation forms for those flights. They still consider them test flights. We don't know if they will actually send out mass media accreditation forms, but it is something that we would consider pursuing, because Blue Origin and the New Shepard rocket that they launch from the West Texas launch facility out there is one of the two companies really competing to be the first to do to be the first one to launch people on suborbital space tourism flights. And they're getting really, really close to that. They're hoping this year will be the first time that that New Shepard and the capsule actually launch with humans on it on those brief up-down suborbital flights. And of course, watching the Blue Origin New Shepard land is always cool as well. And then watching the capsule come down very quickly and very close by, really cool. So definitely something we would consider to do here. So just a couple more minutes and then we're going to have to wrap it up here at Cape Canaveral. We're here until about 11 o'clock, which is in about 3 minutes from now. Public Affairs should be coming around, giving us a signal pretty soon. They already did, or something like that. But we're definitely going to kick it over to DOS, because as much as I have really enjoyed talking about Solar Orbiter and Atlas V, and we'll continue to talk about it, the really super exciting double header that's happening between this one and the Antares rocket from Northrop Grumman with the Cygnus resupply mission up to the International Space Station tomorrow is also just as important. And DOS is up there covering that for us. So if you've got questions about Northrop Grumman, about Cygnus, about the Antares 230 rocket, about how all of that works, about Wallops in the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, go ahead and throw those questions into the chat here on our YouTube stream, and Michael will get those over to DOS, so DOS can walk you through and answer some of those as well. But real quickly, I'll go over what our plan is for tomorrow, because tomorrow we don't plan to do one live continuous stream. Because the missions are so different from one another, we want to give them their own day in the sun, or night in the sun, as you might say. Yes, Richard is clapping at my very bad joke there. But so tomorrow, so tomorrow we will be back for remote camera setup here tomorrow morning. Richard, what time is that tomorrow morning? Remote camera setup. 9 to 11. Yeah, so 9 to 11 Eastern time, 2 to 4 UTC time, 1400 to 1600 UTC. We will be back live much closer than this at the actual Atlas pad, where we'll be walking around the whole pad and giving you a huge tour of that. And then we will stop that one. We'll have another live stream just for the NG-11 Antares and Cygnus launch to the space station. And then we'll have a third live stream of the day for the launch of Solar Orbiter and Atlas V here. But we are getting the signal that we have to wrap up here. So we are getting the signal that we need to wrap up here and get back on the bus. So DOS, take it away, man. We're going to go 800 miles north to DOS at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport at Wallops Island in Virginia. Thank you all for joining me here. Stay right where you are, because it's a seamless transition over to DOS. Got to get on the bus in like a minute.
Well, I'm just talking a lot, basically. So we're just going to stand by and make sure that we are good to go. Let me pop back over into here. Okay, so apparently we're good to go now. All right, we're online. So I am going to need to rely on some back channel stuff here. I don't actually have the YouTube chat open right now, but we are live back here from Wallops once again. A little bit of a trick on the handoff there, but hey, we're 800 miles away from the Cape. We have 2 live stream cameras going. We've got the NASA Spaceflight team out here at Wallops. I'm Doss. With me, I've got Justin Navin, who's one of the writers for NASA Spaceflight. Say hi right quick.
Hi, how are you doing?
You got to sort of yell at him.
Hi, how are you doing?
There you go. Just right in the back of the mic right there. We are going to be here for just about an hour while Chris G moves to another location. And we are going to talk about some things that are going on with NG-13. So one more time, give me a status check. Let me know that we are all good to go. You can hear what we're saying. Audio's 5x5. I will tell you there's not a lot to see out here. We are at the Wallops Visitor Center.
Yes.
The Wallops, at the WFF, right?
Exactly.
The Wallops Flight Facility Visitor Center.
Goddard Space Flight Center.
Of Goddard Space Flight Center. There you go. So we're over here at the Visitor Center. We're about 7.3 miles away from the pad. And you can see the rocket's not actually vertical right now. You can see the water tower there, and you can see a couple right there in the middle of the screen, a couple of the lightning catenaries, the towers out there. The stick you see on the right-hand side, that's actually the new pad, right?
Yes.
That's the new pad for Rocket Lab.
Yes.
LC2. What's it called?
LC2.
LC2, because that's pad 0A, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, why is it pad 0A?
Well, it has, I don't know exactly the naming scheme for it. However, it's actually one of the oldest active pads here at Wallops, one of them, because it was previously the Conestoga 1620 was previously used for that pad once. But now it's for Antares, so there you go.
Gotcha. So where you see the building there that's over on sort of the right-hand side of the screen, and then you see the thicker stick, I guess I'm going to call it the thicker stick, to the right of that little square building that's about 2/3 over to the right of the screen. That's that Rocket Lab. But the main event here is for Antares, and like I said, Antares is still horizontal right now. Do we know when they're going to raise Antares up?
Well, they should verticate the Antares around 3:30 in the morning, 3-ish in the morning. The wee early hours.
The wee early hours of the morning. And why? I mean, why isn't it vertical right now? I mean, they're just as lazy.
Well, I mean, it's because they're going to do their late load, which is a new feature for the CRS-2 contracts for Antares, or for Northrop Grumman rather. It's because what they do is they take the top of the fairing called the pop top, they slide it off inside a certain mobile clean room.
Yeah.
And then they put the late load and sensitive cargo in the Cygnus.
And so we're sort of just biding our time here right now. In just about an hour and 15 minutes or so, we are going to go back over to the pad, and we're going to stand right next to Antares. So we'll get to see the mobile clean room, not inside of it, I mean, clear, because I'm not very clean. But we'll get to see the mobile clean room attached to the top of the payload fairing for Antares. We'll get to see Antares still horizontal, see the pad. We'll be right up next to it. Right now, we're sort of standing by from the visitor center over here, waiting for our clearance, waiting for the media bus to take us back over to the Antares pad. So honestly, we wanted to do a little bit of a stand-up and see if we can answer some questions. So I am going to be, again, relying on the NASA Spaceflight studio to relay some questions over to me. And if you have any questions, now is a good time to put those questions into the YouTube chat, and Justin and I will do our best to answer them up here at Wallops. But again, we're live from Wallops, and we are gonna do some answers Q&A.
All right, sounds good.
It sounds good. I'm yelling into the mic.
I need to do that more often.
You can tell who's spent thousands of hours yelling at a microphone, right? In chat, definitely give us some feedback if there's anything you want to pass on. I'm gonna see if I can actually bring the YouTube chat up directly on my phone really quickly. But again, we're out here at Wallops. We are biding our time, waiting for our media clearance to go back over to the pad. And in just about an hour, we're gonna be standing right next to Antares. Antares loaded up with science and supplies going up to the International Space Station. Launch is occurring tomorrow at
5:39, I believe.
5:39. I think it's a 5-minute window, so it's a one-shot thing, right?
Yes.
A really short window because it's going up to the ISS. They actually have to chase the ISS to get the supplies up there. So a very short thing.
Crossing your fingers, no wayward boat or any airplanes or
wayward
kayaking.
It's crazy. I see people here at Wallops kayaking to watch a launch.
Well, the first couple ones actually were canceled, not canceled, but scrubbed, because you had people that wanted to see it, but were a little too eager to get a good view, I think.
I've always said I wanted one of those, the James Bond crocodile submarines.
Exactly.
Like down at the Cape, it would fit right in. You get you a Florida Gator submarine, and we put a little periscope with a live stream camera on top. We could hang out in the retention pond next to the pad. Don't tell anybody that's over there that that's a plan.
It's fine.
Let's see here. How many CRS flights is NG signed for? That's a good question from Trevor there. Do you know?
I believe, now I'm not certain, but I believe that we've already had, this will be the second one of CRS2. There should be about, I'm going to say about 4-ish maybe.
Right.
A couple more, and they have signed, there's a understanding that there's a possibility if NASA would like to extend it,
right?
Which is similar to what they did for CRS-1 contracts for at that time I think it was Orbital,
right?
And then it was Orbital ATK, and
right.
then Northrop Grumman.
They switched because it was Antares flying, but it used to be OA-10 or whatever, right? I think OA was.
It was Orbital.
It was Orbital ATK.
I think it was Orbital when I first started. It was Orbital Sciences.
It was Orbital Sciences, then it was Orbital ATK.
And now it's Northrop Grumman.
Now it's Northrop Grumman Space Innovation Systems or something like that, right?
Somebody once told me a couple weeks ago it was actually now Space Systems now.
Does it say on our lanyards or something? Does it?
Northrop Grumman.
Yeah, it just says Northrop Grumman on the lanyards they gave us, so.
It's part of Northrop Grumman.
Anyways, if you're just joining us, we are out here at Wallops. I know that there's not too terribly much to see because we're on the mainland over here, over at the Wallops Visitor Center. I'll zoom out, and we're about 7.3 miles away from the pad. We have about 45 minutes. We're just hanging out here, and then we are going to move over to the pad. We're going to stand right next to the rocket and do some more Q&A, and that's going to be cool because we can actually zoom in on different things.
Yeah.
The late load is sort of unique. I mean,
it is. I don't think any other, at least CRS for ISS ops, I don't think that's really a thing unless you want to consider people on spacecraft. And you could say that is light load, but that's people.
That's people. That's a totally different thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But I want to get over there because I think it's really cool. It actually looks like one of these, you know, you fly on a plane and you have the snack truck that comes over up next to your plane, and it's got like the scissor lift on the back of it that lifts up and connects to the little side door, you know, the door you don't go in, the snack door. It's almost exactly like that, except it's for the Cygnus cargo. And this scissor jack room, this mobile clean room, drives up to the nose cone of the rocket, the fairing, the payload fairing. It's not a nose cone. And the scissor lift raises the clean room up, and they attach it, they seal it to the front of the payload fairing. They open up, you said it was a pop top?
I've heard referenced by Northrop Grumman Northrop Grumman officials as the pop top.
It's got to be like a colloquial name, that it's the pop top on the Antares or something.
And in photos, if you're looking at a photo of an Antares, a recent Antares, not the older ones,
right?
Because they didn't have that. But I think at least maybe NG-11 or maybe NG-11, but definitely NG-12. You'll see the fairing. There'll be the top of it will have a little like circular
little hatch
thing.
Yeah,
and it's actually in the fairing that it's actually obvious you can see it.
So we won't be able to see that because the clean room's covering it up.
Yeah.
Sort of the point. They keep the clean room sealed to the top of the rocket so they can open it up without letting, I don't know what sort of wildlife is out here at Wallops. There's a sign over there we could probably read, and it would tell us about the wetland wildlife.
Well, it is February, so like not much. Come summer, then there's very.
But we'll zoom back in on the pad. Again, the rocket is not vertical right now. It is in the horizontal position because it has that mobile clean room attached to the top. In less than an hour at this point, we will be back over at the pad. Chris G is going to take over for us in just a bit. We're going to hop back on the bus. We're going to travel back over to the pad, and we'll be able to see all this stuff up close and personal. Let's see here. Can you see the Rocket Lab pad? That was something we talked about, right?
You will see it, and it's actually, and you'll see a lot of photos. It's actually It's one of the closest pads, at least I've ever seen,
Right.
to anything else. It can be measured probably in feet. I mean, lots of feet, but you could probably reference it in feet. So it's so close that it's probably, I don't know how close it is, but
it's like 2 water tower lengths. Like if you laid the water tower on its side. So I turned the camera, and the little stick in the middle of the screen right now is the Rocket Lab pad right there. Is that? Yeah, it should be, because the water tower and the lightning cannon is
from our vantage point, it may be actually through the water tower.
through the water tower. You think so?
Yes.
Is it really that close?
It's that close.
No.
Yes. If you watch the live stream on the NASA TV or go back, well, you want us to watch ours, but if you go back to watch a replay of the NASA TV one in the past, you actually will see it in the right,
like right next to the other. No kidding. Well, I will have to get over there. I haven't been out to the pad since they've completed the construction on that. But when we get over there for the remote camera setup, we're going to do our live stream setup for there, and we'll see exactly how close those two things are. Let's see, any other questions here? We got that. We got the CRS flights. We talked about it used to be OA, and then it turned into NG for Northrop Grumman, and we're on NG-13.
Yes.
NG-14 is in the HIF.
Yes.
So we did a little thing from outside of the HIF. I could not take the live stream transmitters inside the HIF. There's ordnance on the rocket. I think the Castor XL, somebody can verify this for me, but it's like 40,000 pounds of SRB?
I can't say exactly how much, but when you go inside the HIF, you can smell the SRB.
Really?
The first time I went in there, you get like this. It's not a fun aroma. It's something that that environmentalists would not enjoy.
I'm trying to read through and see if I can see Castor 30 XL with thrust vectoring. Yeah, but my little handout here doesn't say. Hey, somebody help us out here. How much does the Castor 30 XL solid motor? It says with thrust vectoring on here. Nice. How much does that mass? Somebody help us out, because it's not on my little handout here, and I didn't memorize that in advance. But it's a lot. And so the moral of the story is we're not allowed to bring the live stream transmitters inside of the HIF. You have to leave your smartphones behind. You have to leave your key fobs, like for your car.
Apple Watch.
Apple Watches, smartwatches, or whatever.
Everything.
Anything that transmits. Honestly, even if you have a camera, like a GoPro or something that has a Wi-Fi on it, that's supposed to be disabled. I'm not going to, you know, anything that transmits is not supposed to go inside of the HIF, because there is ordnance inside of the facility.
And,
so,
speaking of the HIF, NG-14's Antares first stage actually arrived in November or late October of 2019, because when I was at NG-12, it had just arrived and it was still like all wrapped up like a little Christmas.
Gotcha. So you saw them when they were putting NG-13 together.
There must have been 3 cores in the HIF at once.
No kidding. It fits 3?
It does fit
like side by side.
Yes, because there was one bit of room and there was 2 like right next to each other.
Yeah.
So
no kidding. Oh, and here, all right, hey Danny, thank you so much for the help here. We're going to answer the Castor 30 XL solid rocket motor is 58,000 pounds.
It's
It's not 40,000 pounds. It's 58,000 pounds, roughly, approximately, right? Thanks for the assist there, studio, since we did not have that in advance. Let me see if there's any other questions. And again, we don't have much to look at. We are hanging out over here. We are at Wallops. We had Christy watching. Christy had much better views of the Atlas roll. I tuned into the live stream to see what was going on, and I've always wanted to catch a roll. I guess I actually saw Parker's solar probe roll. They let us see and actually Parker Solar Probe didn't roll. The building rolled away from it.
What's it called? VIF. No, not VIF.
It's not a VIF. It's the mobile. It's like the IMBY.
Mobile access tower.
Something like that. Yeah. I saw the building roll away from Parker Solar Probe. I didn't see Parker Solar Probe roll away from a building. Atlas rolls away from the building. It rolls out of the VIF over to Pad 41. Delta 4, the building actually rolls away. You build the Delta 4 in a HIF horizontally, you carry it over to the pad, you verticate it, and then the building actually rolls away whenever you're ready to launch the thing. So this one here, they put the Antares together in a HIF, horizontal, HIF, right? So the Horizontal Integration Facility. And then they roll it over on sort of it's a truck with lots of wheels.
It is.
Does it have an official name?
No, but it's very similar to what it looks like when SpaceX moves their cores after they arrive at Port Canaveral,
Right.
From their from the dock to wherever facility, either the they have Slick 40 or LC-39A.
Yeah.
Wherever one they want to, when they transport it on the old shuttle roller,
Right.
it looks very similar to that, except just different making, obviously, but it's just very similar looking to what they use for that.
Gotcha. So again, we're standing by waiting to get a little bit closer to the pad. I know right now there's not too terribly much to look at, but bear with us. We're going to be over at the pad proper here in just a bit so that we can talk about the late load, we can talk about Antares, the RD-181s, the SRB second stage.
Yeah.
So you talk about the other rockets that have liquid fuel second stages, right?
Mm-hmm.
Antares actually has a solid fuel second stage,
Exactly.
which I think is unique in the U.S. launchers
well,
right now.
the fact that it's a combination of multiple companies that build it. I mean, you have the RD-181, which is basically it's both today's launches are actually their engines that you'll see on the first stages of both launches today, not tomorrow, sorry, will actually be of the same maker actually in Russia.
Right.
So you have the RD-180, which I believe is a two-chamber version. It's one engine with two nozzles.
Right.
And then you have the RD-181, which is just one chamber. It's the same except one chamber version of the RD-180.
Gotcha.
So it's yeah, and also on another note, you'll see that even though we're out, much to look at today, you will see that Wallops is actually the oldest. Some say it's the oldest NASA launch facility in the country. It's actually older than the Cape. It was used by the Navy and other U.S. agencies before, but it's actually one of the oldest launch facilities in the country. So.
Gotcha. Nice. And so I've actually been able to connect to the chat here, and now I can read chat as well. So if there are questions, you can put some things in. Whenever people have comments because I say something wrong, hey, at least I'm pointing in the correct general vicinity of where the Antares rocket is right now. I almost got caught off guard with the SpaceX launch when I was out on the boat. I could not actually see the correct pad.
Abort?
Yeah, the in-flight abort. Yeah. I was pointing the stupid camera at the wrong pad, and luckily the correct pad was in the frame whenever the rocket launched. So every now and then you get out here, it's windy, it's sunny, I'm looking at this little 3-inch screen on the camera trying to squint my way down to 2020, and it's hard to see what I'm looking at sometimes, but I'm here in the live stream working, so I've got that going for me, which is nice. Anyways, if there are any other questions, we are just standing by. Again, we're out at Wallops, waiting for the launch of this Antares rocket carrying the NG-13 commercial resupply mission up to the International Space Station. I was talking with the guys down at the Cape, and I think there may be a flyover of the space station at the Cape.
On launch day.
At some point.
Well, yes, because it has to, the orbital plane is, and I'll try to explain this while I actually show it in my hands. What actually is occurring is the same direction the camera is pointed. It's probably southeast direction. What happens is, a minute or two before, or is that right before or right after liftoff?
Right.
Hopefully tomorrow. What happens will be the station will fly directly directly over where the center of the camera is pointing, basically due south.
Right.
So it actually will go off. It'll be off the coast, but it'll be skirting the coast basically.
Right.
Down. So they may see it depending on how the weather is.
Yeah, gotcha.
Because it will be sunset. Yeah.
No kidding. This is like a south. This is an eastern launch. Is it southeast? I saw that Northrop Grumman.
It's southeast. It's always they never go north here.
Right.
For some reason, I think it's range issues maybe. The only thing I could think of is I'd guess it may be Newfoundland, or maybe if they went north, it may interfere somehow. But yeah, I mean that's basically how they've always done it.
Right.
Which is great though for people that want to see it.
It's just walk right across there. Camera's not on or anything. It's okay. So there may be because they're launching into a window to try and catch the ISS. In order to do the rendezvous, you have to launch at a very specific time. That very specific time is 5:39
Here, yes.
Here, 5:39 Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. It's a 5-minute window, which means it's a one shot.
Yeah.
You get one shot. It's no, oh, let's go to the end of the window. The window is only 5 minutes long. Do we know if they're targeting the middle of the window, the beginning of the window? Doesn't really matter.
I'm not really sure, but at least for NG-12, it was like right at the beginning of the window. Like it was
right at the beginning.
The aim of the beginning, which I'd assume, I believe it's the beginning.
Yeah. You're going or you're not going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I think the weather report said that the current weather was 95% tomorrow?
95%. It's a cumulus cloud, I think, issue. If there is lots of cumulus clouds, that's the main worrying, thing they're worrying about.
Yeah. And if you back up here, it is a beautiful day at Wallops. There are like one little puffy cloud, and then way over on the horizon there's some clouds. So hopefully if we get some clouds tomorrow, they're sort of scattered. We have a good view way downrange of the rocket.
Not like the in-flight abort when you can barely see it.
Yeah, so we'll zoom back in. Again, I know that we're really just sort of zooming in on a water tower that has some haze between us and it, but that is what we have until in about, what time is it? In just about 40 minutes, we'll be right at the pad, right up next to the fence, talking about the rocket. And we just figured, hey, we might as well keep on going for now. Yeah. So let's see here. There was a question. The thumbnail shows a satellite going around the sun. Is there a new satellite to orbit the sun? Oh, well, hey, that's because we're doing 2 different streams here. Earlier today, we had Chris G down at Cape Canaveral, and he was watching the rollout of Solar Orbiter, the ESA mission that's on that Atlas 5411.
Yes.
The wacky single SRB asymmetric booster.
I think that's the first time it's been since they've used that configuration since the Osiris Rex. I know they used it for that.
Right.
But I don't remember anything other ones. That's another mission that's used that.
The 411, the asymmetric launcher, yeah. So Chris G was watching the rollout of that earlier, and then we were over at the Antares HIF, and we went back to Chris G to watch the rollout. Now we're back with us. We're at the Wallops Visitor Center right now, and we're waiting in just about 30 minutes. We're supposed to be boarding the buses to go back over to the pad, and we will continue our live stream Q&A from the pad proper over there in just a little bit. So that's why we're here. I know there are other places we could go. If you go over to the ferry landing, you have to stand on top of the slide to get a good live stream signal. It's a little bit rough, but there you're only 2.2 miles away from the pad. I've got a great video on my YouTube channel. It's like one of the most beautiful videos I've ever taken, watching one of the OAs back it was from the ferry landing where you're 2.2 miles away.
I know that.
Oh gosh.
I know that around here, obviously, if you know a little more about the Antares, is that the first 3 flights of Antares, when it was Orbital Sciences back, I think before, I think it was 2013, maybe 2014. It was during, for those who don't know, it was during, I think it was Scott Kelly was on the ISS.
Right.
And what happened was they used the it's called the AJ-26. It was a modified or modernized version of the N1 rocket engine. What is it? I can't remember the name of it all of a sudden of the engine, but NK-33, that's it.
Gotcha.
And it exploded, unfortunately. And there's before that, lots of locals around here used to watch the launch from all these different side roads of farms and everything.
Just right up next to it almost.
Like almost
right across the water.
Yeah. And they have now, if you ever come to Wallops, nearby one of these things, they close them.
Right.
By the Virginia Department of Transport, because they don't want you to go down these side roads, because if the wind is
the wrong way,
you'd have to breathe in that.
Yeah, yeah. And again, this is sort of unofficial. It's not like I interviewed Virginia Department of Transportation or anything.
No.
But my understanding was that some of the roads, there's a concern about safely being able to get people out of the roads, because they're not really designed for having 100 cars parked on the side of them. So certainly you can get really close to the rocket, but if anything happens, you want to be able to get the people out of there, and it's just not designed for that sort of throughput.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, unlike the Cape, Wallops area is very sparsely populated. It's not like Titusville, and there's lots of roads and everything.
Right.
There's I think one way. It's basically only 1 or 2 ways out of.
It's really rural.
Area.
It's right on the coast. It's really rural.
It's very pretty, but I mean, for instance, cell service around here is very spotty.
Yeah.
There's chicken farm. There's a chicken farm right next to the entry gate for the causeway to go to Wallops Island itself.
Right.
It's the middle of nowhere, basically.
It's the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
basically.
It's hard to find something to eat for dinner sometimes. The hot dog stand in Chincoteague is always closed. So, anyways, we answered the question about Solar Orbiter. Nate Spade, you were talking about NASA's ground. We're at the visitor center right now because we have to meet the buses in about 30 minutes to board and go right up next to the rocket. So that's what we're standing by for. We are sort of just answering some questions and hanging out. William Webb, don't you get a second window the next day offset by an hour? I think it's offset by like 30, 40 minutes or something.
I think it's actually like 5:15, like it's earlier in the hour.
Yeah.
But if it was my guess, if it got canceled or scrubbed rather on the day of launch on L0, the secondary launch day is actually not the best weather.
Yeah.
It's not.
The weather tomorrow on the backup day is, I think the last I saw it was like 60% instead of 95.
I live in the DC area, and I know the weather that day isn't the best.
Right.
So I'm guessing here, maybe 2 hours, east, it's still gonna be not great. So I'd assume it probably would not go up unless you're lucky.
Well, I'm hoping that we get it going tomorrow. Again, it's scheduled for 5:39 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Somebody can do the math to UTC for me there. Is this still +5? Is it +4? There's like summer, I don't know.
There's lots of time zones.
somebody help me out. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but let's keep on reading some chat here. Again, that launch is not happening today. We are standing by right now. We are waiting for the buses. The buses are going to take us back over to the launch site, and we're going to be standing right next to the rocket. We'll talk about the late load, the little scissor lift clean room that can drive up and attach to the PLF, and we are just standing by waiting to get a little bit closer there. So let's see here. How many launch sites are there in America?
Well,
I guess we're talking about the United States.
Yes.
Right? America is a big place.
If it depends how you want to count it. So you got Wallops, which is the oldest one. I think it was 45. We tested, I think, the Mercury capsule escape system here.
Right.
The Little Joes. After that, I believe it's the Cape. How you want to determine the Cape? You could say it's 2 maybe there, because you could say it's Cape. You got Cape Space there, and then you also have Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. So I don't know if you want to count those as the same.
Yeah, are those two? Because there's the NASA side and there's the.
Because there is a difference. There's a very.
The Cape Canaveral Space Force Base.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that's official yet, but that's like coming down the pipe.
I mean,
was there an announcement about that or something yesterday?
There was rumors at the very least of that.
Yeah.
And then you also have the more secretive Vandenberg Air Force Base.
Right.
I don't know if it's joint base, because they also have the Air Force there too.
Right.
So I don't know, but you have that. Then also you could say White Sands too. You could say.
Yeah, White Sands is sort of a test range.
Test range.
Nothing orbital going out of White Sands, but.
But you do have within the where it's SpaceX Falcon 1.
Right.
You could say that's still U.S. territory. It's not,
right.
So you could say that's kind of it was for sporadic times.
Yeah, but in terms of big active launch sites right now, we got Cape Canaveral, which is Cape Canaveral Air Force Station and the NASA side of things there. Then we also have Wallops, which is where we're at right now, and then we also have the Vandenberg Air Force Base out that way. Yeah. So does Spaceport America count? I mean, they're not launching commercial missions or anything like that.
I would say it's a active space facility. It's a suborbital spaceport. You could say that.
A suborbital spaceport.
I'm just making that up.
Nice.
It sounds good.
Just made that up. A suborbital spaceport. I do like Spaceport America, I have to say, because they have that student rocket launch every year.
I've heard of that, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Their students are taking the rockets up to 10 and 30,000 feet. Yeah. And it's like Burning Man for rocket nerds in the middle of the desert. There's a tent city and everything. The hopper counts. We got some Boca Chica love in chat.
Sorry, Boca Chica, yeah.
That's right. The up-and-coming launch pad.
This water tower does not fly.
Yeah, this is not a flying water tower.
It's a stationary water tower. A static water tower.
Is this 30 hours until launch? That's about right. 24 hours. Yeah, that's. Hey, Warrior Cat fan number 1, aka Dragon Cat. That's a long name. We are about 30 hours until launch right now. That's true.
Count your watches.
What are they launching? They are launching NG-13. It's a commercial resupply mission going up on an Antares, Northrop Grumman, taking supplies and science up to the International Space Station. We haven't been to the What's on Board briefing yet, but I saw somebody from the Sapphire experiment on the What's on Board list.
It is there, yeah.
Do they have another Sapphire going up?
Yes.
So Sapphire is the experiment. We need to make sure of this. Sapphire was the experiment that they're studying the effects of the behavior of fire in space, or fire in micro-G, right? You're like, Das, that's dumb. There's no air in space. How can there be fire in space? Well, the rocket engine gets to orbit, so there, carries its own oxidizer.
Apollo 13, they did a spark maybe. So,
It's true as well. But a Sapphire experiment is they're intentionally creating a controlled fire in a controlled box
with hopefully no repercussions.
Inside the Cygnus, and they have like cameras. They're studying how the fire basically behaves when it's in a micro-G environment
playing with fire with science.
Playing with fire with science. Okay. But I think, and again, we need to listen to the what's on board, but the last Sapphire experiment I was here for, they ran the Sapphire stuff after Cygnus had left the space station. So it's all on board and it's up there on the ISS, and then when they're disposing of Cygnus, remember they put like, Cygnus is not reusable, it burns up in the atmosphere, so they disconnect it from the station.
They put a rack on top of the hatch for CubeSats too.
Are they deploying CubeSats?
So I know that when, I think it was, there was a photo they posted, Johnson posted it, it was of Jessica Meir and who is still on there, and Christina Cook, and they had just closed the hatch. It was still connected to the Unity module,
right?
But they had it's kind of like a rack they install bolted on top of the hatch, and so just like pop them off on the hatch location.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. So hey, y'all, give me just 1 second. I'm going to check in over here. I heard some chatter from the studio, so let me just make sure that nobody needs anything. Let's see here. Scored images. Got it. Caster 30 XL. Excellent. Second window, we got the second window question. Carry any small sats? We just covered that one. How many launch sites? We just got, oh yeah, Guam as well. How do you count Stargazer?
It's a mid-air launch site, you could say.
But
it's not.
It flies out of an airport carrying, when it launches, carrying a Pegasus.
It leaves the ground.
Yeah.
It leaves the ground
at one of the launch. Yeah. They haven't launched it like out of Mojave or anything, right?
No.
Mojave is like the weird experimental air launch thing that's going on right now.
Yeah.
So, hey, NASA Spaceflight Studio, I am checking in with y'all right quick. I have been listening in, and what is that? Those are birds. Wait, we got some jet noises here.
Two of them. Above us, just directly above us. 12 o'clock above us. Sorry.
What are those? I don't know if I can get them. Here, hold this right quick for me.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to be able to get those.
That may be in the...
Well, there are two things flying in formation up there.
They can definitely see each other. Like they're like holding the same altitude.
What is that? Hang on, chat, hang on. I may not be able to actually resolve these things. There's a glint. Can I catch the glint?
Those are jets.
Yeah, they are. That's what we heard, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get them. Can I no-scope them? Hang on.
They could be going to south up here to Northrop. There's a naval air station. They have Northrop. They could be going down to Northrop.
Yeah, I bet you they're in frame right now, and it's just so bright that I can't actually see what's going on.
They're white.
Yeah, there's two jets flying in formation up there that we heard, and then there's another flight going out that way. I don't know if those are the two things. I don't know if there's two commercial flights or what. Sorry for the brief intermission there.
It was very cool.
Suddenly we heard jet noises, and we wanted to see if it was something interesting to look at. Again, where's my water tower? You're not my water tower. There you go. We are out here, we're just standing by at Wallops. Michael, I copy the information about the 10-minute warning there. We are, thank you, sir. We are just hanging out here. We figured we might as well just stay alive, but pretty soon we are going to be right up next to the pad. We are going to get on the media buses. We're going to go out there and live stream for almost 2 hours, standing next to the Antares.
Maybe we'll see Rocket Lab, maybe, I don't know.
Maybe. We'll have to check on that. We'll have to check on that, because we're not badged for Rocket Lab, so
yeah, maybe.
It may be impossible to look at Pad 0A without getting Rocket Lab in the shot. I don't know if they're so close. I'll do what I can, right? So anyways, let me pop back over into YouTube chat and just read some YouTube chat right quick. Got some Space Force. It was the Space Force flying over. Thank you. You could hear it on the stream, Chet. You could hear the jets going over on the stream. We heard 2 jets, then we looked up and there were 2 planes.
They didn't sound like airplanes.
Yeah,
like
not commercial jets. Yeah.
And I had a plane that did a low pass over once, and that's definitely a jet. That's definitely a. It was white though, which leads me to suspect it could be a NASA.
Sometimes they have the what are the aircraft that they fly out of here? Jimmy B. Our boy Jimmy B used to fly on.
It starts with a G.
Oh gosh! See, I should know this.
It has 2 props on. One of them has 2 props.
Yes, I have all of this awesome footage from the last time I was here. God, what is it? It's the PG-13. That's a movie rating.
Orion.
Okay, but what did Jim Redenson fly?
If it's a propeller, if it's a 4-plane propeller, it's a P3.
E2 and C2.
Okay.
E2 and C2. Is that what our boy Jimmy B? Can I say that on the NASA Spaceflight stream? I say that on my Twitch stream, but I don't know if I can call him Jimmy B on the official NASA Spaceflight stream. But at Wallops they actually have a carrier trap training facility on the runway back behind us across the road. And every now and then they will be you'll see them flying around. They're fun to track. What's up, studio? I can hear you. Studio, did you need me? E2C Hawkeye.
Ah, that's a Hawkeye. I knew it had
Thank you. It's his official rapper name. Nice. It's his official rapper name. Look, I would like give him a fist bump and be like, dude, Jimmy B, we appreciate what you're doing. They're fighting the good fight. Seems like there's some venting going. Oh, there is a little bit of.
So where would that be?
Can y'all make that out on the live stream there?
My camera.
Yeah. Again, I'm squinting my way down trying to see this, and we've got all this water between us, so we get a bunch of atmospheric haze. But that looks like something going on. What do you see?
Something. So my camera has, like, you can zoom in.
Yeah.
I can see it. I mean, it's something.
I see the little puff. Here, let's turn on the P1000 and see what we get.
It's definitely. It doesn't look like. It does not look like haze distortion at the rock. It cannot be that.
Yeah.
It does not.
Because it's a distinct. I mean, I can see it with the Mark 1 eyeball here.
It could be. Sorry, it could be Antares. But I mean, like it.
Yeah. Chat, can y'all make that out on the live stream there? Can you actually see that, or?
But I don't know if they'd be venting, because we were just right up to it a couple hours ago.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think they would be venting that, because a lot of people were close up to the rocket, and like we're gonna like.
I am not sure.
They wouldn't be doing that if we're out to go up to the pad.
I can definitely see a little plume of something, but there's so much atmospheric
but it's not
haze
moving.
in there.
I don't think it's moving though, is it?
It does look like it's static.
Does that mean Antares? Because it's right where the ramp is.
Yeah.
It could just be Antares, the sun angle.
Did we get like a sun glint off the back of the mobile clean room, maybe?
No, I think that's Antares, the end of Antares.
But we wouldn't see Antares from this angle, because
no, it's like it's a slant. It's not directly.
It's like at an angle.
It's at an angle, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even on the 3-meter lens, the 3-meter lens. I can see it, but there's so much atmospheric haze blowing across the water there. It's not really easy to discern. What I see, the white. It looks like a puff, but it also looks like a square structure on the other camera.
Yeah.
So, I mean, hey, let's get on the bus and get closer and see if they let us see what it is. That's what I say. I do see what you're talking about there. You can see it on the live stream, but don't know if that's venting or what. Let me pop back over here. Is one of you guys' names Chet? No, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to chat. I'm talking to the people that are in the live stream is who I'm referring to when I say chat. You see it between the 2 lightning towers. We need a spotter scope. I've got a P1000 here, Mordicus, but there's so much haze. There's just atmospheric interference.
It's awfully hazy.
Yeah. NASASpaceflight says it's Antares filling the storage tanks as an official answer there.
That would make sense.
Yeah. So hey, NASA Spaceflight, thank you. I had to hop back over to the chat.
You know, there were when we were at the launch site. We were at the launch site a couple hour, about an hour ago, and we saw lots of personnel actually on the pad.
Right.
Right there. So that would make sense.
Gotcha. And so hey, NASA Spaceflight Studio, how are we doing with Chris G? We are getting closer. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting closer to the time where we're gonna have to move over to get on the buses. But just let me know how Christy is. Okay. Okay. We have to get on the, we have to be on the buses at noon, so we've got about 18 minutes here. And y'all, stream, I'm talking to the studio, we're seeing where Christy is. We're gonna pop back over to Christy, who can continue answering some questions back down from Cape Canaveral. I think he's gonna be near Titusville. And we may, we're trying to see exactly when we can do that handoff right now. So we figured we would try. We've never done this before. It's not every day that two different media events coincide. Yeah. All right. Copy, studio. Thanks. All right. We're just we're talking about our timings here. I know the live stream can't hear the studio because we talk bad about you all the time. People that are watching, we're like, oh my gosh, really? I'm kidding. I'm DOS. I can say that stuff. So we are just about ready to go get on the buses and go right up next to the rocket so we can continue our live streams here. If you have any more questions for us, you can talk questions into chat. I promise I won't make fun of you out loud, but we will try our best to answer any questions you have about this completely empty field that we're looking at currently. I mean, look, all right, time out. It's not like you want us to be on the camera. We could certainly mosey over this way. And we could stand on the camera, but who wants to look at us, right? The answer is nobody, not you. The lighting's a little rough here as well, but I'm DOS. And we've got Joseph, one of the writers for NASA Spaceflight here as well with us. So we are just hanging out in the meantime. Is that level? The camera does not look level from this perspective.
Well, it could be just the, I think it's just the hood on.
Aha! It was just the hood. The camera looked like it was completely tilted to the side, but it was just a little hood that wasn't on all the way. Looking sharp, looking cold. What do you think it is, like 40 out here?
It's, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not too bad, but I mean, if you're not used to cold weather, it can be pretty.
The sun is nice. Like the sun is nice and warm, but the wind is a little chilly.
It's the breeze in the water that's getting it kind of gets in.
Yeah. Hey, there's another question. Do we know how many gallons of water they dump on the pad?
Well, I don't know exactly, but it's enough that like they don't drench the pad when it launches, but they put it in the it's in the flame trench. So it's not like an outrageous amount.
Right. It doesn't have like a deluge system.
There is, but it's not. It's nothing. It's nothing compared to like the rainbirds at the cave or something. It's not like they just like full on like just douse the bottom. No, it's.
Gotcha. So that sounds like a good question for research. I don't know how many gallons are in that water tower out there, but if somebody can figure out how many gallons there are at the Pad 0A Wallops water tower, let us know. And there's another thing. We've got, what is the longest elapsed time people can stay in space before it becomes damaged? I don't know the answer to that. I don't think that we know the answer to that.
I don't know. I mean,
yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of physiological changes. We did the year in space and stuff like that. We just had
Christina Cook
come back.
Yeah, congrats to her on her
record-setting
and a smooth landing.
Yeah. So I don't know that we know the answer to that yet. It's something that we need to study.
There were some effects though. I read that somewhere that when Kelly came down, he had some, like when he went to sleep, he woke up and just kind of felt just not quite right. Not there.
I've heard funny stories. We have astronauts on the stream sometimes, and stories about like they forget that they have to hold on to things. Oops. And you can't just have like a pitcher of water float next to you. So somebody hands you a pitcher of water and you just expect, oh, I'm just gonna stop its momentum and it'll float, and they just drop a glass pitcher of water on the ground. I've heard of things like that, but physiological, DNA damage, gamma radiation, Fantastic Four sort of nonsense.
I heard that Luca Parentano, he was interviewed or like right when he got back to Europe.
Right.
And he said that, I think it was like yesterday, I was on YouTube, there's a video, and he says that his shoulders, he feels there's a weight on his shoulders, it's kind of hits you.
It's just like,
and in your neck.
yeah.
You have to hold up yourself.
I mean, when they come out of the Soyuz, it looks like they're being taken to the intensive care unit, right?
I mean,
like they sit them down
yeah.
in the chairs, and they have the field hospital tent set up.
I mean, they also have it's such a small hatch.
Yeah.
It's not like when, like the thing.
You don't just do a somersault out of the Soyuz.
The shuttle, it's like a big hatch, and they can come down. You know, it's kind of a little simpler, but like the Soyuz, you have to like squeeze through it.
Yeah.
Like, it's more of like a you have to use more energy to get out than just, and more help too.
Yeah. It looks like Mordicus has some information. Again, Mordicus, I don't know you. I hope that this number's correct, but Mordicus says that the water tower has about 200,000 gallons. Not verified. I don't know, Mordicus, is that an official source, or are you telling me it's like at least 3 gallons? But that seems like a lot. 200,000 gallons in 1 minute. And it sounds like from the studio here, we're about to have Chris G back as well. So when Chris G is getting set up, I think we're probably going to be shutting this down in about 3 minutes here, so we have time to get back over there.
And get some stuff together.
Yeah, it's a bit of a walk.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Some people walking out.
Any other questions? We got that one, we got this one, looking sharp. There's the water. Again, we're just hanging out. Ian's seeing 200,000 gallons as well. Thank you. It's like you need to cite your source or verify the data. It's not something I know off the top of my head, so I don't want to be like, oh, wow, thanks. Yeah, it's 1 billion gallons, and tell somebody bad information. That happens on live streams way too much as it is. 4,000 gallons a second flow rate from Ian there. Yeah, thanks, Ian.
I mean, this pad is only used about two times a year. So it's not like Atlas or
right.
or like the Slick 40 or someone, they're using it all the time, and they have to use a lot of water because the rapid use of the pad, you know, they can fix it.
Like more wear and tear. Yeah. There was a question about how much fuel the rocket has. Let me see. Propellant mass, 800 kilograms. That's not right. Oh, that's for Cygnus. 800 kilograms. Now see, it has the Cygnus propellant mass, but this has the total mass.
It definitely has less than other rockets because,
yeah,
unlike other rockets, it's got a second stage that's the SRB.
Right.
So it's obviously some less liquid mass to it.
We know the second stage was 58,000 pounds in the Castor 30XL, right? Mm-hmm. And the entire Antares weighs 310,000 kilograms. Yeah, I'm reading off a sheet. What? I'm the live stream guy. I'm not a reporter. Which is just under 700,000 pounds of weight, I guess, not mass there. But let me go ahead and look here. We are just about getting to the end of the segment. Again, I'm Das, and with me I've got Joseph.
Yep.
Out here at Wallops. We are getting ready to kick you back to Chris G. He is down at Cape Canaveral, and he's going to be talking a little bit more, doing some more Q&A. So again, just a new thing that we're sort of trying here. I literally drove to Wallops because I wanted to do a live stream where we cut from the Cape to Wallops, back to the Cape, back to Wallops. So hope this is something y'all are enjoying. I know it's not like a big massive launch where somebody's blowing up a rocket intentionally or anything like that. But it's still a good time.
It's hard to beat that.
Yeah, it is hard to beat that. Yeah.
Especially, you know, on a boat trying to get a camera.
Good deal. Hey, Chet for Q Maestro. You're absolutely welcome. Sorry if we didn't know the answer to some of the questions, but we come out here, we try to do this sort of thing to help some people get some more information. Heck, I learn every time I come out as well. But let me do this. We're going to step back behind. We'll zoom in one more time, and let's see if we're about ready to cut to Chris G over here. Did the pad stay in the middle? Yeah, the pad stayed in the middle.
Check that. That's it.
All right. Hey, studio. Das here. We're about needing to be clear. How are we looking? Give me a seat. Yeah. Hey, so live stream, Das and Joseph here out at Wallops. We are going to be signing off for now. You'll get a little bit of a Be Right Back screen, and when it comes back, you'll have Chris Gebhardt. He's down at Cape Canaveral, and he is going to be talking a little bit about the 2 missions that are going on. Launches happening tomorrow. I've got to shut it down for now. We're going to go get on the bus, and they are going to take us over to the pad. So the next time you hear my voice, you see my camera, we're going to be right up next to Antares with NG-13. But for now, Wallops is going to clear out. You'll get a Be Right Back screen for just a couple minutes, and when you come back, Chris Gebhardt with his fantastic hair will be here to answer some more questions for you. We will see you nerds in just a bit.
Did you say go to talk? Go to talk. Oh, got it. Okay, live. All right, and that was awesome, Das. Hope you guys are really enjoying the the multi-spaceport tour that we are doing here. Today, so for some synergy here with Northrop Grumman, I am actually going to start on the vehicle assembly building here, because Northrop Grumman, what Das was just talking about with the Cygnus and Antares vehicle up at Wallops in the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, also has a presence here at the Kennedy Space Center, and you're looking at the iconic vehicle assembly building. The western-facing side of that building, which is where Northrop Grumman has rented one of the huge vertical integration high bays. It's actually, so if you see the 2 gray stripes running down the vehicle assembly building, the stripe to the right is known as High Bay 2. It was used to stack Apollo 13 and Apollo Skylab. And then for the shuttle era, it was used as one of the processing facilities at first for the solid rocket boosters, before they built a dedicated processing facility for them. And then it was also used for storage of complete space shuttle stacks if they ever needed to take shelter from hurricanes after they were stacked. They never actually needed to do that, and the only full space shuttle stack that ever visited High Bay 2 was the STS-96 vehicle with Space Shuttle Atlantis, when it did fit checks just to make sure everything was fine in there before rolling out to the pad for its primary mission. But Northrop Grumman, and the reason we're talking about this is because Northrop Grumman has become the first commercial entity to rent space inside the vehicle assembly building, and they have High Bay 2. So if you're looking at the 2 gray stripes running down the vehicle assembly building, it is the stripe to the right-hand side of your screen, High Bay 2, that Northrop Grumman has rented and is in the process of reconfiguring for stacking and integration of their Omega rocket, which is a solid propellant and liquid propellant vehicle that will launch from pad 39A. Just to the left, I'm going to recenter the camera just a little bit. Just to the left there, you can kind of, I'm going to center it in frame. So you can see some cranes working there, and what you can't see because of the tree line is Northrop Grumman also leased one of the former Apollo mobile launchers and former Space Shuttle mobile launch platforms that the Apollo rockets were stacked and launched on, that the shuttles were stacked and launched from, and they are reconfiguring that for the Omega rocket as well. So some great synergy here, Northrop Grumman, and set not just the vehicle assembly building and the former shuttle mobile launch platform for the Omega, but they also have another large presence here at the Cape. They build the solid rocket boosters for the Space Launch System. They build the solid rocket boosters and all of the white components on board the Delta IV rocket family. So while no more Delta IV mediums with solid rocket boosters will fly, the next time we see a Delta IV rocket a little later this year for a national reconnaissance mission launch in the May or June timeframe, everything white that you see on the Delta IV rocket is actually built by Northrop Grumman. And likewise, they will also be the company that will be providing the solid rocket boosters for the for United Launch Alliance's Vulcan rocket, which will succeed the Delta IV and eventually the Atlas V. And later this year, hopefully, we think this year is when it will debut, might be 2021, but they will also be taking over production of the solid rocket boosters for the Atlas V rocket as well. So some great synergy here at the Cape between what's happening at Wallops that Das was just talking about, and how Northrop Grumman operates down here at the Cape. So thank you so much, guys, for sticking with us as we move back and forth between the different launch facilities. This is really cool, and we are so happy that it has worked out for us here. So if you haven't, so what we're going to do for the next half an hour-ish while Das is en route to the launch pad to bring you up close views of Antares on the launch pad as it gets ready for its late load cargo operations tonight, we're actually going to do a tour of all the Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral Air Force Station launch pads. And we're going to go through a bit of the history. So if you have any questions about anything space related from Florida, Apollo, the Shuttle era, Mercury, Gemini, SLS, SpaceX, Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, ULA, Atlas V, Delta IV, Delta IV Heavy, and Blue Origin. We're also going to talk about Blue Origin here. Ask those questions and we'll get them answered for you. So please send us your questions on this sort of Cape history tour that we are doing here. So there's our vehicle assembly building, but we're actually going to go north to south here today. So we are going to start all the way to the north, as the camera pans. All the way to the north. I may have missed it. Hang on. Where are you, Pad B? Yeah. Being across the river, sometimes it's hard to, you can see it, but the camera, what the camera is focusing on is a little different. So there we go. There's Launch Complex 39B. We're going to start at Pad B and work our way all the way down to the Blue Origin pad. So if you've got questions, throw them up in chat. And Michael, and again, a huge shout out to Michael Baylor, who is producing this behind the scenes for us and making sure all the switching back and forth between the streams is working. A huge shout out to him. He'll push the questions to me. But let's start with Pad 39B. So the Kennedy Space Center, when it was first envisioned in the 1960s as the place where the Apollo moon rockets would launch from, the original plan called for 3 identical launch pads, A, B, and C. And A was supposed to be the one farthest north, B was supposed to be the one in the middle, and C was supposed to be the one furthest to the south. Of that original naming convention, only Pad B retained its original letter numbering system as LC39B. The original plan for Pad A was canceled, and they scaled it back to only be 2 pads. So what is now LC39A actually was originally LC39C. So B was the only one that kept its original designation. Now, out of the 2 pads at Kennedy, B is the one that hasn't gotten as much love as Pad 39A, but it still had a wonderfully storied history, starting with the Apollo program, when it was used to launch the Apollo 10 Saturn V human mission to the moon, which was the final dress rehearsal for the Apollo program, which went all the way to the moon. They actually got in the lunar lander, undocked from the Apollo command module, tested out some of the ability of the lunar lander to operate and function in lunar orbit, and then redock. So basically that mission did everything but land on the moon, and was the crucial mission of Apollo that paved the way for the eventual launch of Apollo 11. And that mission, Apollo 10, went from Pad 39B. It was also the launch pad that launched all 3 of the human Skylab missions. So at the end of the Apollo program, when part of a Saturn V rocket was converted into the Skylab space station, the 3 crew missions that lasted about 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days respectively, all launched from Pad 39B on a Saturn IB rocket. So it was the first of the 2 Kennedy Space Center launch pads to launch more than 1 rocket. It originally launched the Saturn V moon rocket, and then the Saturn IB rocket for the smaller crew missions. It is also the launch pad where the very historic Apollo-Soyuz mission launched from in 1975, where Russia launched their Soyuz first, and then Apollo later that day went from Pad 39B here at the Kennedy Space Center for that historic link-up between, I'm sorry, not Russia, the Soviet Union, between that historic link-up between the Soviet Union and the United States that really symbolized the beginning of the end of the Cold War. And then after that mission of Apollo-Soyuz, Pad 39B was reconfigured for use with the Space Shuttle program. Its beginning use with the Shuttle program was actually marred by tragedy. It was originally, its first use for the Shuttle program was marred in tragedy. The very first time Pad 39B was used to launch a Space Shuttle mission was January 28, 1986, when Space Shuttle Challenger and the STS-51L crew launched from there on their mission to deploy the TDRS-B satellite to perform numerous biomedical and Earth science investigations, to study a payload to actually study the sun, and a payload to actually perform the first human observations of Halley's Comet as it was making its every 83-year trek through the inner solar system. Unfortunately, that mission ended in tragedy 73 seconds later when Challenger disintegrated after main stack breakup. But it rallied, as did the Space Shuttle program, and it was the launch pad from which we returned the shuttle fleet to flight with STS-26 and the Space Shuttle Discovery. It hosted 54 Space Shuttle missions total, including all 3 return-to-flight missions of the Space Shuttle program. It also hosted the return-to-flight missions STS-114 and STS-121 of Space Shuttle Discovery after the Columbia accident. And it is also the pad from which the Hubble Space Telescope launched from in 1990. It had a wonderful history with the Space Shuttle program, numerous elements and modules of the International Space Station, and numerous shuttle missions to the Russian space station Mir launched from Pad 39B, and some very important microgravity and Earth scientific research missions as well. At the end of the program, or by the end of the program, Pad 39B had hosted all 5 operational space shuttles. And it was also the pad from which Space Shuttle Endeavour made its maiden voyage in 1992 on the STS-49 mission. And Endeavour is the only mission from which Pad B hosted the maiden launch of a space vehicle from. To date, I should say. At the end of the Space Shuttle program, its final role in the shuttle program was to host the STS-400 stack of Space Shuttle Endeavour for the Hubble rescue mission. But that was very thankfully not needed. The only space mission to date which we have fully prepared and stacked and made ready to launch, which we hoped never would launch, and it did not. After that, it was reconfigured for use by the Ares 1X rocket in October 2009. When that performed the only test flight of the Ares and Constellation program, after which the fixed service structure and rotating service structures were torn down, and Pad B underwent a major modification and upgrade, making it a 21st century and multi-user pad at the Kennedy Space Center. Its primary role will be to host every single mission of the Space Launch System, or SLS rocket, for the Artemis program. And it is also the pad from which Northrop Grumman's Omega rocket will launch from as well. So this will mark the first time that a pad at the Kennedy Space Center will be used to launch more than one rocket at the same time, and making it a truly multi-user pad. Just down the bank from that, of course, is historic Launch Complex 39A. Obviously, today, this is where SpaceX launches the Falcon 9s and Falcon Heavy rockets from on their satellite missions. It is also where the Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon will begin later this year in just a few months, hopefully Q2 of 2020. So anywhere between March and June. I'm sorry, May. April and June. April, May, or June. Is when NASA and SpaceX are currently targeting the no earlier than date for the first Crew Dragon mission with crew members on board, Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley from NASA. It will mark the first time that humans launch from the United States since the end of the Shuttle program in 2011. Pad A is, we say historic, you know, a lot of times we can kind of roll our eyes and say, well, of course it's historic, but it really truly is a historic launch pad. It's where the very first Saturn V rocket launched from. It's where the Apollo 11 lunar landing launched from. It's where Skylab, the first US space station, launched from. It is where Columbia and Challenger and Discovery and Atlantis all took their maiden voyages. It is where Columbia launched on her final mission, STS-107, in 2003. It is where Discovery, Endeavour, and Atlantis closed out the shuttle program in 2011. Before SpaceX took it over in 2014, conducting their first flight of a Falcon 9 from 39A in February of 2017. A wonderfully historic launch pad, multi-user in that it is no longer a NASA pad. NASA technically still owns it, the federal government still technically owns it, but SpaceX leases it, but no NASA rocket will launch from that pad, but NASA missions, commercial missions, will go from this pad. In addition to all the commercial missions that SpaceX has launched from it, its next role will actually be to launch the 6th flight of Starlink satellites from that pad in March, just a couple days after the final version, after the final Cargo Dragon, or Dragon version 1 vehicle launches from neighboring Pad 40 at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, or by that point probably the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, although the name change hasn't happened just yet. But a wonderfully historic launch pad here. And then if we keep going down, we get to the vehicle assembly building. So we talked a little bit about how Northrop Grumman will be taking over, has already taken over High Bay 2 for stacking of the Omega rocket. On the other side of the vehicle assembly building is where the High Bay 3 is, which is where the SLS rocket will be stacked. The vehicle assembly building has a wonderful history as well, being a multi-vehicle integration facility. It was, of course, first used to stack and integrate the Apollo Saturn V moon rockets and the Skylab mission of the Saturn V. It is where all of the Saturn IB missions that launched the 3 Skylab human missions and Apollo Soyuz were stacked from. It's where all 135 missions of the Space Shuttle's program were stacked in. It's where originally the solid rocket boosters and the main engine facilities for the shuttle were located within the vehicle assembly building before their dedicated buildings were constructed. It's where all of the external tanks for the shuttle program were brought and hoisted into their checkout cells in the 2 high bays that you are looking at live in the screen. On the left, High Bay 4, and on the right, High Bay 2. Before they were then brought over and mated to the solid rockets before the shuttle orbiters were brought over. You can also kind of see the former orbiter processing facilities there. There's 1 over to the right-hand side of your screen and 2 at the base of the vehicle assembly building. The 2 at the base of the vehicle assembly building after the end of the shuttle program, when Discovery, Atlantis, and Endeavour were flown out or towed to their museums. The Air Force took over those 2 OPFs, so Orbiter Processing Facilities 1 and 2, for the X-37B spaceplane. for the Air Force that launches on the Falcon 9 and Atlas V rockets here from Cape Canaveral and the Kennedy Space Center. And the one over to the left, the standalone over to the left, was OPF-3 for the shuttle program. It is now the commercial crew and cargo processing facility where Boeing builds the Starliner spacecrafts as part of NASA's commercial crew program. So all of the hardware from Apollo, all the hardware from Shuttle, and buildings from Shuttle and Apollo live on in this commercial era where they are, where the U.S. Air Force and Boeing and SpaceX and NASA and Northrop Grumman are all using all of this heritage hardware, propelling us into new areas of spaceflight exploration. So before we move on to the Cape side, we have a question here from USA Comp 2K3 asking, can we briefly run through the naming conventions for the space shuttle missions? Why were letters? Why are there letters for some missions and not others? Were they all in chronological order? Excellent question. So let me readjust, because I think I can get 39A and the vehicle assembly building into this picture. Yeah, there we go. 39A and the VAB. Name a more iconic duo, I challenge you. But yes, let's talk about the space shuttle flight numbering sequence, because at the beginning of the program, for the first 9 flights, it was STS 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then starting with the 10th flight, they changed the numbering sequence to be both numerical and alphanumeric. So they had numbers and they had letters from the 10th flight of the program through the 25th flight of the program, which was the Challenger disaster. So the reason, the public-facing reason that they gave for the naming change was because the space shuttles were supposed to launch both here from the Kennedy Space Center and from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. And the numbering change was made to make it easier at a glance to tell which launch site the missions were actually going from. So let's take a mission, STS-41B, which was the which was the 10th flight of the program and the first to use the new numbering scheme. So STS stood for Space Transportation System. It's the commonality between all of the missions from STS-1 through STS-135, the Space Transportation System, which was the formal name of the Space Shuttle program. The first number in that sequence, so we're using STS-41B as an example. So the 4 stood for the fiscal year the flight was planned to fly in of the shuttle program. So 4 was the 4th fiscal year of the Space Shuttle program at that time. So the next number in that sequence would either be a 1 or a 2. So 1, as in 41B, indicated the Kennedy Space Center as the launch site. 2 would have indicated Vandenberg Air Force Base as the launch site. The letter was then the sequence within which the mission was originally planned to launch in that fiscal year from that launch site. So STS-41B was originally the second, B being the second letter of the alphabet, or at least the English-speaking alphabet. So it was the second planned flight of the 4th fiscal year of the program. And if you look through the records of the 2 years that we, or the 2 years that we used this, or the 3 years that we used this numbering convention, fiscal year 4, 5, and 6, you'll notice that there was no 41A. There was no 51E mission, and that's because in the early days of the Space Shuttle program, missions sometimes got canceled after they were planned, or missions got combined together because of delays with the program, delays of new orbiters joining the fleet, and so on and so forth. And NASA kind of thought too that it would be easier to, or less obvious if there wasn't like a mission 51E, but there was a 51D and a 51F, right? NASA thought it would be a little easier and less noticeable if missions were skipped than if there just suddenly wasn't a mission 10, but there was a mission 11. So that was also kind of part of it as well. But we used that numbering sequence from STS-41B, the 10th flight of the program, beginning in 1984 through January 28th, 1986, when the Space Shuttle Challenger broke apart 73 seconds after liftoff. After the Challenger disaster, when Vandenberg Air Force Base was decommissioned and the shuttles would only be launching from the Kennedy Space Center, NASA reverted back to just the plain numbering system. And an interesting fact, Challenger, if it had not used the 51L alphanumeric designation, would actually have been STS-33, the 33rd planned mission of the shuttle program. But you can see how many missions were actually canceled in that time. They didn't all fly in order, because Challenger, while it was the 33rd planned mission, was actually the 25th flight of the shuttle to fly. So instead of picking up the numbering sequence with STS-34, they just went back and said, okay, Challenger was the 25th flight of the program, so the next one will be STS-26. And from that moment on, the numbering sequence was just when they were planned, one after the other. They did not always fly in sequence. For example, when we started flying again after Challenger, STS-26 flew, then 27, then 29, then 28. So they didn't necessarily fly in numerical order, but their numbering designation was simply the order in which they were originally manifested and planned to fly. And that's how you get kind of weird trivia moments where Columbia's final flight, on which she was lost with her crew, was STS-107, but the last numerical number that Columbia flew was actually STS-109 to the Hubble telescope a year prior to STS-107 flying. So that's how you get flights going, not in numerical order, but I hope that breaks it down for what the numbering sequence was for the shuttle program. Because I agree, it does get a little iffy and questionable, but I hope that answered your question there. So moving away from the Kennedy Space Center, we are now going to zoom in on this launch pad, which is Slick 41, Space Launch Complex 41 on the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. If you've been watching the stream all along, that's where we were when we started our stream 2 hours and 18 minutes ago, where Atlas V rolled out for the Solar Orbiter mission. This pad has not always been used for the Atlas V. It has been used to launch many different rockets across from its history. Cape Canaveral Air Force Station used to have, or Cape Kennedy as it was known for a little while before they went back to Cape Canaveral, has had many, many, many launch pads, the vast majority of which are not active launch pads today. So Slick 41 here right now, where we just were, is of course the home of the Atlas V rocket right now, and will be the home of the Vulcan Centaur rocket as well when that one begins flying here next year. It will, again, so that will make it another launch pad here at the Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral Air Force Station that can launch two completely different rockets, because unlike Pad 39A, which launches Falcon 9s and Falcon Heavies, they're the same rocket family. The Atlas V and the Vulcan rocket are completely different rockets. They are not part of the same family, even though they will share the Centaur upper stage with one another. They share nothing else. Vulcan is completely new. It will use completely different engines, new solid rocket boosters built by Northrop Grumman, not Aerojet Rocketdyne, which builds the current solid rockets for this Atlas V as well. But for a little bit of history on this launch pad, even though United Launch Alliance currently uses it for the Atlas V, it was previously used to launch the Air Force's Titan III and Titan IV rockets as well. So it was, it has to date hosted 92 missions. The Solar Orbiter launch tomorrow will be the 93rd. And it is capable of launching payloads into orbital inclinations as low as 28 degrees and as high as 57 degrees. It is an active launch pad, as we just went over with the Atlas V. It was first used on December 21st, 1965 to launch a Titan IIIC rocket. And the last launch off of this pad was on December 20th, 2019, to launch the Atlas V with Starliner on its orbital flight test. The rockets that it has launched to date include the Atlas V rocket family, the Titan IVs, the Titan IIIe, and the Titan IIIC rockets. And of course, as we mentioned, it will then be used to launch Vulcan. This pad has not yet launched any humans into space, but sometime either later this year or next year, depending on when Starliner is ready to fly after its less than stellar orbital flight test and the numerous software issues and communication issues that they have to work through and fix, this pad will launch humans eventually. Either later this year or next year on an Atlas V rocket with Starliner. It will be the first time that humans launch from Slick 41, and that will mark the first time since Apollo 7 in 1968 that humans will launch from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. Following Apollo 7, all human missions from the United States have since launched from either LC-39A or 39B at the Kennedy Space Center. So part of the greatness of Commercial Crew is a return of human launch presence to the Cape Canaveral Air Force side of the Florida spaceport. So in this image, what you are seeing on the right side of the screen, just right of centerline, you can see the 4 lightning mast towers. You can see a little tower and 2 towers sticking up in between them. That is the crew access tower for Starliner. On the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, the tall, skinnier tower in those lightning towers is the launch umbilical tower where the Atlas V is currently mated to, which we saw roll out a couple of hours ago. On the right-hand side of the screen is the Atlas V's vertical integration facility, where the Atlas V is stacked. So if we keep moving down the coastline here, the next pad we will get to is right there. It is hidden by trees from our view, but you can see the 4 lightning towers, and that is Slick 40, or Space Launch Complex 40, where the Falcon 9s launch from. It can only handle launches of the Falcon 9. Slick 40 cannot launch Falcon Heavy rockets, nor can it launch any other configuration of a rocket today. It is solely, a Falcon 9 launch pad. What you are looking at right now is the 4 lightning mast towers at Slick 40. Earlier today, actually, when we were driving out to pad 41 for the Atlas V rollout, the transporter erector was actually vertical on the launch pad and went back down horizontal while we were at pad 40. The last time this pad was used was just a few days ago on the 29th of January when it launched the 4th flight of Starlink satellites. And the next use will be no earlier than the 15th of February when it launches the 5th flight of Starlink satellites. After which it will host on March 2nd the final flight of the Cargo Dragon version 1 vehicle and the final CRS-1 Commercial Resupply Services 1 contract with SpaceX and NASA for cargo and scientific resupply of the station. After that launch, SpaceX will actually transition to using the Dragon version 2, or the Crew Dragon as we call it, to take on both crew and cargo only launches to the International Space Station. The Dragon version 2s can launch just like the Dragon 1s from either 39A or Slick 40 in their cargo configurations. So even when SpaceX switches over to the Crew Dragon and uses it for cargo-only flights to the International Space Station, the cargo-only versions can still launch from both of SpaceX's launch pads, whereas the human Dragons can only launch from 39A because it's the only one with an access arm for crew access to the actual launch vehicle and capsule. Slick 40 has to date hosted 97 missions. The next Starlink mission on the 15th of February will be its 98th total. Just like the Atlas pad, it can launch to as low as 28-degree inclination orbits and as high as 57-degree inclination orbits. Like Slick 41 as well, it is one of only 2 launch pads on the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station side of the Florida complex that has also launched missions to the International Space Station in the Cargo Dragon configurations. Slick 40 was brought online and used for the first time on the 18th of June 1965 to launch a Titan 3C rocket. And its last use was, of course, on the 29th of January to launch the fourth flight of Starlink missions. To date, it has launched the Titan 3C, the Titan 34B, the commercial Titan 3, and the Titan 4 rockets. Perhaps its most memorable non-SpaceX mission to date was its use to launch on a Titan rocket that launched the Cassini spacecraft and the Huygens lander to Saturn, a wonderful mission to Saturn that ended in September of 2017 after numerous mission extensions and about 17 years, about 13 years of direct observations of Saturn while in orbit. A wonderful, wonderful historic pad as well. And of course, SpaceX now has control of that pad and uses it to launch their Falcon 9 family fleet. So as we come back down, there are some vestiges of the program, of the Titan program, that are left, and you're looking at two of these buildings. These two buildings were originally constructed for part of the Titan program, where the solid rocket boosters were delivered and stacked and integrated, and then the Titan core was brought over, and then the upper stage was brought over and mated before the whole thing was taken out to the launch pads, either 40 or 41, here for their liftoffs. They have since been repurposed. United Launch Alliance has one of them. It is where they are currently building the Vulcan mobile launcher and umbilical tower. So again, just because buildings were originally built for one program here at either Kennedy or the Cape doesn't mean that they stopped being used once those programs ended. They were definitely repurposed and are continuing to be used today. So as we keep going down, the next building that we will come to is Space Launch Complex 37B, where the Delta IV family of rockets are currently launched from. The only Delta IV rocket in the family that is still flying is the Delta IV Heavy, and there's actually a Delta IV Heavy on that pad inside the white structure that you see. The white structure you see there is the mobile gantry, the mobile enclosure, which permits stacking of the payload on top of the Delta IV Heavy, and then it is rolled back and cleared out of the way before the Delta IV's launch. And there is a Delta IV Heavy on that pad. It actually went through a wet dress rehearsal in January for its upcoming role launching a classified National Reconnaissance Office satellite in May or June. It has a storied history as well. It has to date hosted 37 missions. The NRO mission in May or June will be its 38th. There are actually two launch pads, although they never built 37A. They only ever built 37B. So even though the complex itself technically hosts two pads, there's only one in reality that's there, and that is built. It was used to launch the Saturn I and Saturn IB rockets for the Apollo program. It was first used on the 29th of January 1964 for a Saturn I test. And its last launch was on the 22nd of August 2019, the retirement flight of the Delta IV medium family of rockets when it launched the GPS-3A2 satellite. And of course, the Delta IV is the current customer with United Launch Alliance on that particular launch pad. And I know Michael talked to me a little bit about where we are with DOS, and give me an indication of how much time I've got left here as I keep talking about these pads here. And so also I'm sorry, T-Man, so T-Man Simple Rockets 2. You had asked a question a few minutes ago about what is the tower in the middle. Do you remember what launch pad we were on when we were talking about that. I am sorry, I did not see that question. I think you're talking about the Atlas pad, where we were talking about the Atlas pad with the tower and with the lightning mast, and then the vertical integration facility, and there was something in the middle. If that's the one you were talking about, that's actually not a tower that's associated with a pad. It is a cell phone tower on Kennedy Space Center property. It's just our line of sight makes it look like it's part of Complex 41 with the Atlas, but it's actually just a cell phone tower. So I hope that's the one you were talking about, and again, apologies that I missed that up front. So if we keep going down the shoreline here, the next thing we're going to get to is a mock-up of a rocket, and that is the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex, where the building to the left is where Space Shuttle Atlantis is on display, and that is a full life-sized stack of a mock-up of the external tank and solid rocket boosters for the shuttle program. And now we're gonna go here, and you're gonna ask, why are you pointing the camera at a water tower? Why a water tower? Why would we be looking at a water tower? Because that is Blue Origin's launch pad. Slick 36, Space Launch Complex 36 is where Blue Origin is building the BE4 and BE3, or BE4 engine test stand, and the launch pad for their huge New Glenn rocket. And the reason, and you can only see the water tower right now because it's the only thing visible above the tree line, they are also building a gigantic horizontal integration facility, and I mean gigantic. This thing is huge, and it's just the steel shell right now of it. But that water tower that you are looking at right now is the biggest water tower on Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center property. It holds more water than the water towers at 39A and 39B do. It is taller than the water towers at A and B on the Kennedy side. It is gigantic and massive. And what's great about this launch pad is if you are south of the Space Center at in Cocoa Beach or Port Canaveral, it is the only launch pad you can actually see from Cocoa Beach Pier and Jetty Park and Port Canaveral. All the others are actually hidden behind dunes and tree lines, but the Blue Origin one is one you're going to be able to see no matter where you are, here in Titusville or south in Port Canaveral and Cocoa Beach. So that's why we wanted to talk about it. They are going full force on constructing that launch pad. They hope 2021 will be the first flight of New Glenn. We know they're already building hardware in their production facility, which we're going to look at next. And that'll sort of complete our tour of Cape Canaveral in terms of what you can see in the Kennedy Space Center, unless you have any other questions before we throw it back to Das, who is at the launch pad, was at launch pad 0A at Wallops in the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport now, waiting for the handoff back to him. But Blue Origin is really going all out right now with their, oops, sorry, bumped the camera, with their production here, and it's really something to see. If you're ever in the area, you can actually drive right by the production facility for New Glenn, and if you're ever here, I really recommend you do that because it's outside the security perimeter gates of the Cape and Kennedy, and it is a huge facility complex. Very impressive to see. Very, very, very impressive to see. So before we go ahead and hand it back over to Das, let's get up above the tree line here just a little bit. Hang on, I gotta move. I need to move just a little bit here to see the Blue Origin production facility for you guys. But there, hang on, let me get the camera all focused for you. Without disconnecting anything. So as we look back across the water here, there is Blue Origin's production facility. I mean, it is absolutely massive. You can see a vibration test stand off to the right that they're building for New Glenn. You can see the base of the actual production facility where New Glenn will be constructed and built. You know, a few years ago when we were talking about the Kennedy Space Center, right, and how it was a single-use facility for NASA for the shuttle program, how the pads at Cape Canaveral were single-user pads, single rocket user pads, and now we are here where Kennedy Space Center has NASA, it has SpaceX, it has the U.S. Air Force, it has Boeing, it has Northrop Grumman. The Atlas V pad at Slick 41 is an Atlas V and Vulcan rocket pad. You know, SpaceX has revitalized 40. ULA is using 37B. Boeing, Blue Origin has leased and taken possession of 36 and revitalized that for New Glenn. When the shuttle program shut down, it's really hard to explain the personal and economic hit that Titusville and the Cape took, and how it felt like everything was shutting down. Even though Atlas was still launching, even though SpaceX was launching, the flights were so infrequent and so far apart from one another. There was really this huge sense of loss that befell the Space Center, and to see all of that having changed with ULA has an incredible launch cadence this year. SpaceX's launch cadence with the Falcon 9s, the Falcon Heavy, the return of crew launch operations this year from the Kennedy Space Center, SLS starting to come together, Northrop Grumman building everything, the X-37B space planes and Starliner and New Glenn and everything. This area has such an energy again, such a purpose again, and it never lost that purpose, but it felt like it did to all of us who were here, and who live here, and for whom this is home, and seeing all of this revitalization is just absolutely amazing and incredible. And if you are ever here for a launch, please take one in, because there's nothing like seeing a rocket leave the planet in person. And if you can't, that's what our live streams are for. So I'm going to check in with my team real quick. I'm getting the word to wrap it up if I can hear me. DOS is ready. So yes, DOS, fill us in. That's it from here today at the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral. I will be back tomorrow. But stay on. The live stream's not ending. I will be back tomorrow with Atlas V, an Atlas V tour at the actual launch pad tomorrow morning. And we'll have all those times, but we're going to throw it back right now to DOS at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport at Antares. And DOS, take it away, man, and let's give some love again to Antares and Cygnus and Northrop Grumman.
All right, give me a status check. Can you hear me now? And studio, let me know if you're getting my audio clearly. It's Dawson Joseph back, NASA spaceflight team here from Wallops. I told you, like earlier, there were like 200 people hanging out, and we were out seeing this hazy picture of these little structures, and it's like, why are you standing there? You can get closer. Yeah, I know. I can get closer. Check this out. We are right next to pad 0A right now, and that right there is the Antares NG-13 mission that will be taking supplies up to the International Space Station tomorrow. Window opens sometime around 5:39 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is what we're doing. So I'm here. With me, I've got Joseph, who's one of the writers for NASA Spaceflight, and we are going to try and do a little bit more Q&A. So I'm going to start up by talking about the different things that we can see, starting at the top of the rocket. The problem with that is right now the top of the rocket is actually the side of the rocket. So remember when we were over at the visitor center, thank you United Rentals for the beeping, the water tower that we saw, remember how small that water tower looked? There's the water tower now. So that's the deluge system, 200,000 gallons of water in about a minute, sort of flooding the flame trench down there to prevent some of the reflections from damaging the rocket, right? When we go down the water tower, that was the little teeny tiny water tower we saw from 7.4 miles away. Now I'm, what do you think, 100 yards away? Anybody know that in meters? Also 100 meters, rough enough. So starting at the top of the rocket over here, you're like, wait a second, that doesn't look very aerodynamic, does it? Why is there a shipping crate on a scissor lift on top of the rocket? That's actually the mobile clean room. That is what allows Antares to do the late load from the pad here. So you can see Antares is laying down right now. It's horizontal. It's assembled horizontally in the VIF, or the HIF, Horizontal Integration Facility with an H. And what they can do is they leave Antares laying on its side like this. In that mobile clean room that you see in the middle of the camera right now, that's actually a truck that's just like bigger, cleaner probably, the snack trucks that park next to your airplane at the airport, right? So they drive that over to Antares, they raise it up on those scissor lifts, and you can actually see the scissor lift structure underneath that clean room, boxy looking, shipping container looking thing there. They raise it up, they open a port in the top of the payload fairing in Antares, and they can basically stuff rats in less than 24 hours before the launch, right? And food. So anything that needs to be added to the payload or anything that's time sensitive that you can't have, like, oh, sitting on the rocket for a week before it launches, right? They can do this late load by raising up that mobile clean room. The mobile clean room seals to the top of the payload fairing. The payload fairing actually protects the Cygnus. You can actually see that would be Cygnus inside the payload fairing right there. You can't see it because it's there's a payload fairing.
Right above where the Northrop Grumman lives.
Right, right. Yeah, right in the middle there. So Cygnus is in the middle of the screen now, but they open up a little hatch. They pop the top on the payload fairing, basically. And they can access the Cygnus, they can get inside of it, and they can late load these supplies. So Antares is going to stay horizontal all the way up until
like 3 in the morning.
3, 4 in the morning here. We don't know the exact time when they're going to verticate it, but it is going to be, it's going to be horizontal just like this for a good majority of the time. Let me see this. Let me see if I can't get enough signal here to pop over to YouTube and read some YouTube chat, right? So I'm popping over to YouTube chat, and I do have YouTube chat. Somebody say something for me so I can make sure that this isn't just frozen. Just like type something into YouTube chat. And if you're on my Twitch channel, I know I've got a behind the scenes thing streaming on my Twitch channel as well, so I'm doing 2 live streams, but I'm reading YouTube chat questions right now, like Jendra. Hey, what's up, Jendra? There you go. Fenrir says test, Taylor Anderson says something, John Nolan, Ian, thank y'all. All right, okay, so good. So we were talking about the late load, and we were talking about the mobile clean room. That's that sort of scissor lift snack airport container thing that they connect to the top. There's the payload fairing, and like Joseph was saying, just in the middle of the camera right there is where Cygnus would be. You can see, can I get, I can zoom in more. Wow, look at that. It actually looks like it's got some crinkly, like mylar or something.
I can't be completely sure about this, but I've noticed that through live streams and NASA videos and being here in person, that it looks like when they roll it out
right
and get it here, and also when they're prior to verticating it, there is some sort of wrapping, some sort of like a tarp. I would think of it as being like on the Soyuzes when they have cargo Soyuz flights,
right?
Like satellites, like the OneWeb satellite. When they roll it out at Baikonur, they have like a warm tarp, or like a keep it like cool and everything in there.
Yeah.
I would just suspect it's something like that, but I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, you can definitely see it, and if we get a chance, I'll see if there's not somebody that we can find to ask that question to. But there is a little bit of a wrap there. I do not believe that that wrap goes with the payload fairing at launch. I think that it's removed. We'll confirm that for you. Let's keep on going down the rocket. You get the Northrop Grumman logo right there, right? And is the Northrop Grumman logo the inner stage? Is that between the Cygnus and the Castor 30 XL?
Most likely, yes.
Okay, I'm trying to see if we can't point out where the Castor 30 XL starts, and I believe
where that clamp down on south, just below the Northrop Grumman logo.
Yeah.
Logo is where the first stage ends.
So the part that has the Northrop Grumman logo on it, all the way down to that clamp, that is the Castor 30 XL. You have the payload fairing to the right of the screen, and the Northrop logo.
Yes.
That is the Castor 30 right there.
Yeah.
So that's the SRB second stage.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what we were talking about. 58. I mean, I'm not even kidding, folks. There's a lift just driving in front of us,
it's like
beeping. It's like Boca Chica.
Going north.
Let me zoom back in, but I know y'all can hear that beeping. It's an active facility. That's the Castor 30 XL, 58,000 pounds of SRB and various equipment with thrust vectoring. That's in the paperwork. They're proud of the thrust vectoring on that. But that is the second stage of the rocket. And then as we continue down the side, that building-looking structure is not part of the rocket. You can't see the A in Antares, so this is actually just the Antares today. But the part there that says Antares is the actual first stage of the booster. That's the liquid fuel oxidizer on board, and that is, it actually says Antares sideways there as well. And we'll get all the way down to the bottom. I believe from this angle we're not going to have much of a view of those RD-181s, but of course the engines on the Antares rocket are the RD-181s. You want to talk about RD-181s real quick?
Speaking of the
sure.
Fuels and stuff. We were talking, at least I was talking to a Northrop Grumman specialist inside the HIF today, and he said that after the first stage drops away,
right,
it separates, prior to it impacting the water, it purges all the fuel out of the vehicle.
Really? It empties the first stage?
So it comes down 50 miles off the coast, and it will purge all propellants remaining.
No kidding.
So it doesn't help hurt all the wildlife.
Oh, it dilutes it.
No, I think like,
well, it purges it,
yeah,
so it spreads
yeah.
out more, right? Instead of it impacting the water and having one spot where the left, whatever. Yeah, yeah.
Second stage is a little more toxic.
The second stage is different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
So let's see if we can't zoom out a little bit here again. And I'm waiting for the cue. We are rapidly coming up on the time where we are going to have to move to the other side of the rocket. The other side of the rocket is going to be a little bit different. It'll be a little bit better lit. We've got the sun sort of, not really behind us right now, or behind the rocket, but it's sort of directly above the rocket, so it's got a little bit of a contrasty sort of bit there. But again, there is the whole shooting match. I'll see if I can't get that right quick. All the way on the right-hand side, just above those. What do you think those tanks are? What do you think?
Well, I know one of them is, I was saying earlier, one of them, the white one towards the, where the flame trench exits.
Right.
And the white one is...
He's reading it with the camera.
Is liquid oxygen.
Okay.
The dark ones are... I can't read it.
Let's see.
Liquid nitrogen, maybe? I think they're definitely all...
It says Mars 2 liquid nitrogen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who knew?
On that big dark tank, and then this right here,
One's definitely,
that says Mars 2, or Mars 12. Maybe it's Mars 1-2 is what that is. Liquid nitrogen. And then what are these stacked tanks over here? Anybody see a logo on those? That's a little bit too small for my 40-year-old eyes to read. Dude, your eyes should be twice as good as mine. They're half as old.
My eyesight's really bad.
But maybe YouTube chat can know. I thought we were going to be able to zoom in and actually read what it says on the side of those tanks there. Did anybody see what is in those tanks? I'll keep going with what I do know. You can see the late load facility, the mobile clean room there, the boxy bit at the top of the payload fairing. There's the payload fairing. It's got Cygnus inside of it, taking cargo up to the International Space Station. The part with the Northrop Grumman logo, that is the Castor 30 XL solid rocket upper stage. And then the part that says Antares, that is the actual Antares booster, the first stage of the rocket that'll light and carry this thing on its way to orbit tomorrow. And I know...
You know what it probably is?
What?
It may be actually liquid RP1. I'm just guessing, but it's different lettering. Like why?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, those long tanks like that, I wouldn't think would be like a bulk fuel like RP1.
They're all different.
Yeah. Somebody's bound to know. Somebody help us out here. Somebody's bound to know. Gaseous into maybe some sort of expansion tanks.
Maybe.
They say that it says .5P or .SP on the tanks. Maybe helium. You know something? I'll ask. We'll see if we can find somebody to ask.
I know SpaceX is some of their pads have similar looking structure.
Yeah.
Like rack looking.
Huh. All right. Did we read what that tank was on the side there?
Which one? The white one?
The white one on the left-hand side.
Oxygen.
This one? Let's see here. What are you? Liquid oxygen. So that's the oxidizer for the tank, or for the rocket, right?
And
Gotcha.
You'll see also on this further left of the of that tank where the flame trench exits.
Right.
And that on that road that goes towards the south is actually where the Orb 2 anomaly occurred when it impacted.
Right.
So you can see a little kind of a divot in the ground.
I gotcha.
That's where it actually impacted. Which is sort of a fun fact.
And then there's an interesting thing here. Simple Rockets see the yellow tube going into Antares. Hey, check it out. I can zoom in on the yellow tube for you.
I think air conditioning.
That right there, that yellow tube should be air conditioning, like climate control for the Cygnus. So that goes into the payload fairing to keep everything on board.
Until liftoff.
Yes, it's part of the vehicle that drives the rocket from the HIF all the way over. Yeah, so that's the yellow tube you were talking about, right? That goes up into the bottom of the payload fairing there. And I do keep popping back over into chat. I hope I haven't missed too many questions. Awesome stream. Dude, Coney Borney, thank you for saying that. Again, we get the opportunity to come over here. All the other photographers are setting up the remote cameras. We are going to have to move in just a second, but massive thanks to the Wallops PAO team for letting us come over here. There's a space on the bus for us. They let us come and just live stream. They're here anyways because they're setting up the remotes, but it's really, really, really cool of them to allow us this sort of access. This isn't the sort of thing you get anywhere else. Like, yeah, I could bring up a picture of Antares and answer questions sitting in my studio, but wouldn't you rather answer questions about Antares standing next to Antares?
Like closer than you can ever get in the public?
Yeah. And we are about to move to the other side. I keep looking down at our, I'm going to say handlers. It doesn't really, that's not really the right term, but
everybody's kind of getting ready.
I keep looking down because they are going to probably have us reboard the bus. They usually don't let us walk past the pad.
I mean, we saw them doing something earlier. So
yeah, they usually have us reboard the bus and they drive us to the other side of the pad, and then from the other side of the pad we go from there.
This little barn. Another thing is this little barn cage thing is actually where specifically where they did in a test a couple years ago, like in 08 or something.
Right.
I forget the exact year, and they did some launch abort test.
Okay.
And that was, I just stop it. That was actually where there was launched from.
You can see that.
Yes.
Structure.
I think it was a pusher kind of test.
The rusty structure in there.
It hasn't been used since then. But
I mean, that seems like part of this test, part of this launch, doesn't it? Look, dude, that thing right there. Is that what you're talking about? The rusty looking structure?
I think
no kidding.
These are old facilities right here that
yeah.
Used, so.
Was that a test for Antares or was that a test for something else?
It was one of those like NASA's trying to test what this may do.
Ah.
It was like conceptual, like what is going to happen.
Gotcha.
I think it was like a pusher abort system.
I continue to say that I really do like Wallops. I think a lot more happens at Wallops than people know about.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sounding rocket stuff that goes out of here.
And it's more laid back too.
They're always firing some sort of sounding rocket up to go after like a noctilucent cloud or whatever. Did I say that right?
And they're people launching all over the globe. They send their staff like Antarctica or like Norway.
Yeah, yeah. There was a Mercury launch abort test out of Wallops 60 years ago.
Yeah,
there you go. USA Comp 2K3. Thank you for the help there.
That'd be the little Joe ones.
Yeah. Do they have one of those up at the visitor center?
If you go to the visitor center, there's a little. That's where they have like right in the front of the building.
Yeah, gotcha. So, am I missing anything else? Are there any other questions for us here? They told us we had like 10 minutes. We've been here like 20 minutes, so I'm not complaining, but I don't want to be that guy, right? Like, oh, now we're waiting on DOS. I don't want anybody to be waiting on DOS. So, anyways, they have that capsule at NASA Langley, the actual capsule that they tested.
They tested multiple ones.
USA Comp?
Like 6 ones.
Yeah. Rocket Lab. Can anybody see?
Like spot the Rocket Lab.
Wait a second. Yes. It is in the frame right now. You can actually see the Rocket Lab Strongback. I cannot film the Antares Pad 0A without getting Rocket Lab in the frame. They almost share concrete, it looks like. They're like connected together. Whenever the Rocket Lab rocket needs a windbreak, they just put an Antares on the pad to act as a windbreak for the Rocket Lab electron.
I don't think they do this, but it's so close they could get the water to lose system from that tower. It is so close that I don't think they do that. But they could if they wanted to rig it.
Yeah. So does anybody see the Strongback that's sort of sticking up there? Again, it's a multi-user spaceport here at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, Mars. And one of the newest tenants that has not launched from here, literally right next to the Antares pad. In the shot right now, not possible for me to point the camera that way without seeing That. Did I get it? That's it,
it,
right?
that's
Yeah,
it.
that's it right there.
Unused.
Is he saying something? We're listening to some instructions. Stand by, Chet. Okay, I don't think he's addressing us.
He's just chatting.
Yeah, I heard somebody shouting something that sounded like instructions, so you may be surprised to learn that I can stop talking on occasion. But if I've learned one thing about coming out here, it's that sometimes it's time for me to be quiet and listen. So anyways, did you get it? Did you see it there, Simple Rockets? Jandra says Rocket Lab may be expecting the next launch to be from the Wallops site.
No.
Ian says they may share deluge water. Yeah, I don't know. Again, chat, when I read these things, I'm not confirming them. I don't know if they're true or not. But we are here today for Antares NG-13 and in just under 30 hours now. Like 24 plus 25, 26, 4 hours, 28, under 30 hours, just under 30 hours.
About exactly 24 hours, people will be already getting ready to watch.
Yeah, gotcha.
So we're getting in that kind of time.
All right. So again, we're sort of keeping our eyes and ears open for when it's time to move. 28 hours, 42 minutes, y'all. Thank you, studio. 28 hours, 42 minutes.
Wallops does have an app if you're interested in that. They have an app that has a countdown.
Wallops actually has a great app.
Yeah.
Like of all the launch facilities, I feel like Wallops has
yeah.
the best website with the most information about the launches that's going on.
And it's good photography.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to say it. It's like they're the number 3 coolest launch facility, but they're trying to be number 1, so they have cooler stuff than anybody else has, I think.
I think their
I'm not a reporter, I can say that.
I think their media team's on.
I really do. I agree with that. So, could you launch a model rocket from here? Not without permission.
No, but if you have permission, yes.
It's a multi-user spaceport. I don't know about Estes rockets launching from there. Again, if there's any other questions, you can toss them into chat. If you're watching me on Twitch, there's actually a camera pointing back at me on my Twitch channel. I know I've been neglecting you. My stream might not even be live anymore. I apologize. Now I need something that combines both the chats together. Let me see if I can't pop over and just say hi to Twitch real quick. Now I feel bad because I've just been talking and leaning into the camera and I don't even know if the stream is live anymore. Twitch, is the Twitch stream live? Biff Tech, can you see me? I guess you can hear me because you're talking to me. Like, give me a status check over on the Twitch side and just... Oh, my Twitch stream is good as well. Dude, studio, thank you for the help. Yeah, I did. I remembered you. Digital. So this is like a new thing I've been doing. We have the official sort of the big feed going out to the NASA Spaceflight stream on YouTube, and then we've got the behind the scenes, like there's literally a camera pointing backwards at us on my Twitch channel. And then sometimes when we're not using the main camera on NASA Spaceflight, I'll be over here talking directly to Twitch chat and stuff like that. But if you want to learn a little bit about how all this works, the behind the scenes camera, me answering those sorts of live stream questions are on my Twitch channel.
And in general, like what it feels like to be here too.
Yeah. It's really cool. So now that Twitch knows that I have not completely neglected them because they do pay my bills, thanks for the subs. Don't know if any tips came in or whatever, but y'all are awesome. We can see you and sort of hear you. What? You're still waiting for the time that I'm going to stop talking. Nice. Let me pop back over to YouTube again. Did I miss any questions or anything on the YouTube side? Anything else we need to talk about?
Oh, well, Antares is actually related to the Zenit vehicle in some way or fashion, because it's actually built by the same company in the Ukraine, and it has the exact same diameter to the Zenit rocket. But I don't think it has any it's not the plans for the rocket are not exactly identical, but the factory floor plans and stuff I've heard are actually like the same like factory,
like some of the form factor or some of the sizes and
stuff. Like, so it's got some relation to the Zenit, and it's got the similar engines to it, which is kind of interesting.
Gotcha. No kidding.
It's kind of a hodgepodge of different nationalities in this rocket, because you got Russia, you got Ukraine, and you got the United States all working together to launch Antares. Yeah, which is great.
So again, if you're just joining us, whatever channel you're watching on, we are at pad 0A We are at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport. It's out at Wallops Island, Virginia. That's a couple hours east of DC. And we are standing by, we're just under 30 hours from the launch of that Antares rocket. Y'all see the people walking up? Oh, I didn't get them in time. Just for scale, you can see some people that are going to be walking next to the rocket. But we are just under 30 hours from the launch of this NG-13 commercial resupply mission, taking science and snacks basically up to the International Space Station. There'll be a what's on board briefing later today on NASA TV, but I haven't read the brochure, so I can't tell you everything that's on board.
It's probably a cube stack too.
How's it going, Pat? You can step over and say hi. We're super casual
hey,
here.
Everybody.
Yeah. I mean, this camera can see you on Twitch.
Hey,
like...
Twitch. Good to see y'all. It's a beautiful rocket, isn't it?
It really is. We're zooming in and
beautiful
reading
day.
labels. It's so nice out today. I hope we get this for tomorrow. It's supposed to be a little bit puffy clouds tomorrow.
It's like perfect times.
Science and snacks. Yes, NASA Spaceflight says
And
science
clothing.
and
People
snacks.
are under there now.
Yeah,
Right
you
under-
can.
Right under the S. Moving around.
There's for scale. I know that was a super rapid zoom, but watch. I'll zoom out, and you can sort of get your eyes on the people that are walking underneath. And then you can sort of see the scale of Antares next to the human beings. Antares is the smaller rockets that we launch, right? It's not as big as a Falcon 9, is it? It's
Nope.
not as big as an Atlas.
Nope.
Yeah,
definitely not.
in terms of the
but
commercial resupply rockets that we're kind of using. I don't know how it matches up with Japan.
H2A, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I would say it's the most powerful for its size.
For its size?
I mean, because it's got a lot of power to it. You know, it's got what engines that are like some of the Atlas engines. Yeah.
It's the only one that uses the SRB second stage, right? We don't have it. NASA's not flying.
Well, the Omega might.
Might?
Because Omega is obviously the first stage of Omega will be a solid. You'll have the two solid boosters on it.
Right.
The second stage is also built by Northrop Grumman. So
Huh.
possibly
Yeah. But Omega, do we know when is it supposed to fly?
2021.
2021. Gotcha.
As of now, net.
What's the ISP of a solid booster? I can't tell you off the top of my head the ISP of a Castor 30 XL. Generally it's lower than a liquid engine? Question mark? That's a question. But I don't know. Can anybody Wikipedia that and see if you can't find the ISP of a Castor 30 XL? We're standing at the pad right now. It's hard for me to Wikipedia
We're actually
stuff.
on a pad,
Yeah.
pad right now.
We are standing on an old, like there's an old foundation of a building,
And this is like, I think that's a pad right there.
and the
I think
concrete
so.
structure that we're standing on is an old, like probably a sounding rocket pad.
Probably.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We're on a pad, watching a pad.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Kerbal 01 says it's t-shirts, tang, and toilet paper. That's what's on the commercial resupply mission.
But
T-shirts, tang, and toilet paper. Nice. Not in that order, I hope.
Need
Actually,
some-
maybe that is
need
the
some
right
new
order.
ones because Exhibition 62 now, so
Yeah.
need some new logos.
and when Cygnus departs the ISS, it'll basically act as a trash truck.
Yes, they
Take
put
all the trash from the ISS and burn it up in our atmosphere.
burn it up in the atmosphere. And we were talking earlier about another Sapphire experiment too, right? Because I saw on the list that there was somebody from the Sapphire team, like Sapphire 4, and so we were wondering if they weren't going to intentionally create some fires on the spacecraft again.
Yep.
So, anyways, I mean, what
This
are
is
we
awesome.
supposed-
I mean,
Did they just leave us?
no, that bus has not moved.
I'm saying about 110.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
gotcha.
It sounded flexible.
It
so-
is Wallops. though.
It is Wallops.
It's like Elon
It's
Musk.
like-
It's like
it's like
Elon
laid
time.
back.
It's like Elon time. It's Wallops time.
Well, it's island time, man. Like, it's got an island time sort of thing out here.
It's
But
Delmarva time.
again, we do appreciate the media team out here at Wallops for giving us permission to come and do this. We're at the remote camera setup right now, and they allow us to come out here, do some Q&A. I don't want people to forget about Wallops. I love seeing launches from Wallops. It's such a great viewing site. Like you can see cool stuff from Cape Canaveral. You can see a rocket after it crests the hill if you go to Vandenberg, right? But you come out to
In a fog.
Wallops
If it's
in a fog. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you can
It's
see
like
it in a
the
fog.
ISAT too. It just goes up because of light. Of,
That marine layer, right? But out here at Wallops, there's such fantastic public viewing facilities. You can be about 7 miles away if you go to the visitor center, and it's just free parking, go over to the visitor center.
Down the coast too.
You can see it all up and down the coast. There's a couple other public viewing areas where you can get a little bit closer. Don't tell anybody about the ferry landing and stuff like that, but you can get up to 2.2 miles away. It really is just a beautiful facility and beautiful launches from over here.
Area
So
too.
yeah, it really is. Yeah, so we are standing by for the launch of the Cygnus tomorrow.
It really is. I mean, if you're anywhere within like 100-mile radius or larger, like you should definitely come down to Wallops and see a launch. It's,
Yeah.
It's really
yeah.
a great place.
It's worth a drive if you're within striking distance of it, you know.
And although Antares is obviously relatively small compared to a Falcon 9 or an Atlas V, because there's these viewing locations that are pretty close, it really packs a punch.
Yeah.
Even though it's smaller.
The sound delay. Like
yeah.
if you watch something from the Cape, you see the rocket go and you're like, all right, 70 seconds or whatever, then you hear the sound. Here at Wallops,
within 10, like 8 seconds.
you see the rocket and you immediately start to hear the sound, because speed of sound at sea level and atmosphere, blah, 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 right? Further are you away that you see the rocket light come at you, but you don't hear the sound immediately. But at Wallops, you get so close, it's surprisingly quick after you see that thing start to go. So you'll definitely see that on the live stream.
Oh yeah, so bright.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, Ian, what are you talking about? What ferry stock? I don't know what you're talking about.
What's up, Ian?
We don't want it to be overcrowded or anything.
Not like NG-11.
Ian knows.
NG-11 was a little crowded.
And I am continuing. I mean, that's our other guy. It looks like there's somebody over there next to the spaceport sign. Let me see if I can get this for the stream right quick. This right here, I'm not really at the right angle for it, but that's the International Space Station on-ramp sign.
Moon ahead.
And it says moon ahead as well. This is not really the right angle to get that from, but I saw somebody setting some remotes over there and I figured I would zoom in on the International Space Station on-ramp.
That's a real Virginia Department of Transport sign.
Is it really?
Yes, I know for a fact.
It's not like they just made a green sign?
They actually like had all the photo op and like put it in there.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like an official Virginia DOT
It's
sign.
actually like all the paint.
It's basically like, and it says on-ramp, so it looks like an on-ramp to a highway, basically, but really it's the on-ramp to the launch pad.
The on-ramp to the
Cool.
launch pad. Oh, no kidding. Oh, well, here's some people that are giving information about the vacuum ISPs. Kerbala 1 said 294, and then Ian had earlier said around 250, so somewhere 250, 290, something like that, roughly. So, alright, let's get this pointed back over this. And I apologize, apparently this is in like crazy fast zoom mode today. So, there we go. We'll zoom back in on the rocket. We are probably going to have to go. We're probably going to have to move really quickly.
Yeah.
We're going to go to the other side of the rocket.
Not for long.
But we're not allowed to keep the cameras on while we're moving to the other side of the rocket, right? So we're going to go to a Be Right Back screen. Studio, if you can hear me, just confirm that you're standing by for that Be Right Back. Probably 5 minutes. We literally just get on the bus. We drive 200 yards. Thanks, Studio. We drive 200 yards. We bring the camera back out, and then we'll be looking at the other side of the rocket with a little bit less pad infrastructure in the way. I think we can get closer on the other side as well. But when we go to the Be Right Back screen, we are going to get on the bus and we're just going to move to the other side of the rocket.
Continue.
It looks like so we're not going to shut it down until he tells us to shut it down, and then we're going to immediately shut it down. He's looking at us. He's looking at us.
Now he's not looking.
No, he's not looking at us. No, he's looking at us. He's walking towards us. About ready? Yeah, whenever.
We're in trouble, guys. Now, sir.
All right. Gotcha. So as we were just saying, you're going to see a Be Right Back screen. When we come back, we're going to be on the other side of the rocket here from Wallops Pad 0A, waiting for that Antares NG-13 launch. But we're going to load up and we will be right back. Studio, go ahead and cut us off, and I will tell you when we're ready on the other side. All right, so as promised, we are back, and it is interesting here on the other side of the pad. The last time I was here, it was a clear shot all the way over to Antares. There's another pad in our way. The concrete structure that you see in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, that's actually the Rocket Lab pad. You can see it right there. Antares in the background, and Rocket Lab is just right there. So the only spot we have here is shooting past the Rocket Lab pad, looking at Antares, which is kind of cool. Like unless I get really tied in on the shot, there's no way for me to see Antares without getting some portion of the Rocket Lab pad in. But we have gotten over here to the other side. You know something, we may actually want to move the camera 2 steps this way. It's such a tiny window there. I'm gonna see if I can't get the RD-181s. Yeah, if I take 2 steps this way, everybody's coming with me. We're very unprofessionally picking up the tripod and moving it, all right? Y'all hang on for a second. There you go. I see one. What am I missing there? Is it just the little side is blocking the other one? So let's see if we can zoom in on the business end of the rocket. And right there, focus for me, that should be an RD-181 engine bell nozzle. What do we call them? One of those things? Yeah. Bell, an engine bell on the back end. So you can see the lifts around it. Looks like people are doing inspections, working on it. But from this angle here, if I moved over just a little bit, I could get that screen, that light, whatever you want to call it, out of the way so that we could actually see the 181s. Now, once again, I'm going to pop back into chat, and I'm going to see if there are questions. I know this isn't a big popular launch or anything. It's literally a milk run to the station. Very important that we're able to do these sorts of things in order to keep the International Space Station up there. But I do appreciate everybody that's been hanging out, participating, helping answer questions, asking questions, all the things that you do whenever you participate in a live stream like this. So let me pop back over into chat, like I said, and I'm going to say hi. I'm Das, I'm K-Space Academy. Ping. That's me. And if you have questions, put them into chat, and we would be happy to ask the studio to look it up for us. Yeah. Oh, go for it. Yeah, dude, you're welcome. You're welcome. Give Das some Dr. Pepper so he gets some stamina back. Nice. Das will be back in the air. And hey, NASA Spaceflight, thanks for telling people. Orbis launches Minotaur rockets from Kodiak. I think there's a Minotaur pad behind us. I didn't realize how close the Rocket Lab pad was. Clearly the stick that I was pointing at earlier was not the correct pad. The Rocket Lab pad is like right there. Mr. Huggy said they launched to the moon, so that was when we were looking at the sign over on the other song. What's a hexagon? Octagon at the bottom. So let me see. It's a little bit difficult for me to see. That hexagon octagon actually looks like it's a bit of reaction frame sort of thing. I believe that's part of the pad structure that's bolted to the bottom of the rocket, but does not fly with the rocket. It's hard for me to see because it's really bright, and I've got this teeny tiny little LCD screen, and the sun is right on it, so I can barely... I see what you're talking about, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's part of the pad infrastructure that is connected to the bottom of the rocket. In fact, it looks like you can see some bolts or some hold downs there. It's really hard for me to see what's going on, but I believe that's part of the pad infrastructure. Ejectio, when does this launch and will it be live? It is going to launch upper left-hand corner of the screen. I believe there should be an L- countdown timer, and that countdown timer should say somewhere around 28 hours. Maybe just under 28 hours if I've done my quick maths correctly. But it's just about 28 hours. I will be here, and I will be streaming it. 28 hours, 15 minutes. Thank you, studio. So we will be live streaming that as well, and that is going to be tomorrow. That window, or the launch, is scheduled for 5:39, I believe. 5:39 is it? Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. And confirm that for me, studio. Is it 5:29? 5:39. All right, thank you. It's a 5-minute window, which is basically an instantaneous thing. It is chasing the space station, so it has to launch at a very specific time to actually get into the correct orbit to catch up to the space station, basically. So let's see here. 20, there you go. Hey, Banana Cam, thanks. I actually can't see that. That's added in the cloud, so I, sitting here, can't see the countdown timer. Let's see. Does Solar Orbiter need a third stage like Parker Solar Probe? Do you know that one?
I'm gonna assume no.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything. I know when they put that star, or whatever it's star, whatever it is,
Right,
on
the
there.
48 or whatever it is. Yeah.
I know they made a big deal out of it. They put it on there, so they haven't been talking about
Making a
that.
big deal of it.
So I'm assuming no.
Gotcha. So that would be a great question for Chris G during the Solar Orbiter live stream tomorrow. But yeah, okay, the studio's got my back. There is no third stage on Solar Orbiter. It's just that Atlas 411 sending Solar Orbiter all the way on its trajectory. Yeah. So again, thanks for the questions there, Banana Cam. Thanks for reading the countdown clock. You know something? I'm gonna go to Twitch chat and I'm gonna see if Twitch chat has any better questions than YouTube. We can make it like a question. Where's the rocket? It's the thing that says reservations. Antares right there in the middle of the screen. Bob Almighty. Where exactly is this camera view located? Like cardinal direction. We are currently south of the pad.
Yes, south.
Yeah, we are south of the pad.
And north of the Minotaur pad OB.
Yeah. We are south of the pad and north of the Minotaur pad. We are, if we're 100 yards away from that rocket, I'd be surprised. Maybe right over 100 yards from the rocket right now. See, Twitch chat has all sorts of good questions.
All kinds.
Milk and cookie runs are always important and fun to watch. Nice, Kid Marcus. Wait, what? Wait, whoa. Is it launching sideways? No, Mank Sauce, that is a great trolley question with your Kappa emote. It's still in the horizontal position because Antares is going to do a late load. You can actually see the structure all the way over here.
It's a better view on this one.
Yeah, you see that? That is actually the mobile clean room. And I've got the leg of the water tower. If we step that way a couple of feet, can you see? Like, is there anything to see where the clean room connects to the fairing? That mobile clean room is what they use to late load supplies and food, time-sensitive things, huh?
There's a window.
There's a window?
Nothing significant.
You're coming with us again, Chad. Hang on, I'll zoom out so nobody gets seasick. There's so much pad infrastructure between here and there. We keep moving the camera. Oh yeah, hi. All right, so from right here, now that gate gets in the way. Can we see a little bit better from there?
There's an open gate here. I don't know if you might see some stuff.
Walk over there and see if you can see anything better. I'll get this and then tell me if that's good. Oh, wow. Well, that camera's not like straight at all, but here. Right there, you can actually see where the mobile clean room attaches to the top of the payload fairing. There's a pop top or a hatch up on top of that thing. Just one second. There's a hatch where they can actually access the Cygnus and they can late load those supplies in. So on the left-hand side of your screen there where that window is, that's the mobile clean room. Up on scissor lifts on the right-hand side, that's the top of the payload fairing. And you can see how there's a seal between the two. And that is how they do that late load. What were you saying? Oh, all right. So apparently we're going to move again here. Let me see if I missed anything. His star doesn't need to pitch over. He doesn't need to pitch over. Nice. So I will switch back to YouTube real quick, see if there's any comments on the late load. You see a window? Yeah, you see a window. Can you get your position or do you have to be pressed? This is press access. So we are here with the NASA Spaceflight media team covering the launch. We are making sure that people out there who like rocket launches don't forget about Wallops and Antares, because I like seeing all sorts of rockets launch, and Antares is definitely a cool launch to see. So Justin was to Joseph, why do I keep calling him Justin? Joseph, I don't think he heard me this time. Was telling me there's another thing that we can see over this way. So y'all post up some questions and I will keep moving. Oh my gosh, this thing's heavy. We have fantastic signal from all these pads too. Now, I do hope that we don't walk into some sort of location where the signal is blocked by these shipping containers or something. So like from right here? Yeah. All right, so we've got another bit of a vantage point here, and you can actually now see the exit to the flame trench. So do you see the concrete structure? There's the guy in the middle right there wearing the safety blaze yellow, and the concrete structure from the middle of your screen to the left-hand side of your screen, that is the flame trench, flame directors. That is when Antares launches, flames go that way, out that exit to the trench. Now you can see some differences between this and some of the other pads. United Launch Alliance over at pad 41 down at the Cape has this massive deluge system around the exit. You can see there's no deluge system on the exit of this. I do believe there is a bit of a deluge system. You can actually see some of these beefier pipes in here. Do you see those bolts on that pipe right there in the middle of the screen? I believe that that actually comes down from the water tower and does, correct me if I'm wrong on this, it injects some water down into the flame trench.
So,
Question mark.
the entrance to the flame trench, like where the rocket actually sits upon the little pedestal,
Right?
there's nozzles all around the perimeter of that, so it just shoots it. It shoots it like a hose all around it. So basically, just like it suppresses it.
Yeah. It's you like how Rocket Lab's pad is in the way of your shot. I can't get Antares from this angle as well as we used to be able to, because you've got that big Rocket Lab pad in there. So it's true, it used to be that we had a great shot of Antares here, and I'll see if I can't get a little bit more RD-181 action. But it is. There's the new pad that they've built, I mean, tens of feet away from the Antares pad. Ah, yes. There is, yeah, Alan McDonald, NASA Spaceflight's already got your back, but there is a public viewing area. The public viewing area will be open tomorrow at the Wallops Visitor Center.
Very limited. Like,
Limited parking, you mean?
parking and
Yeah.
just everything's limited.
And that's about 7.3, 7.4 miles away from the launch.
Yeah.
So it is free to go and see it from the visitor center. And it's limited parking. It's not a huge facility. Get there
No,
early if you want to see it.
Yeah, it packs up quickly, and especially if it's on a Sunday, there's a possibility a lot of people come, and the roads around here are not very wide.
They're not designed
So
for the
if you
throughput.
can get out, be ready to wait in your car for a while. It's one of those kind of scenarios.
Yeah, Gendro was saying that they saw a pipe with a cap on it.
I mean, sure there's the deluge arm on right to the right side of the flame of the base of the rocket.
Right?
Where the people that man is.
Uh-huh.
The white hard hat. There's a little arm looking thing.
To the right-hand
Shoots
side?
water out. It looks like on the.
So, chat here, and I'll zoom in. Is that what you're talking about right there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that maybe.
So that might be part of the... Is that, Jandra, is that what you were seeing, or were you seeing something else? You said a cap on it or something. You said it was a rainbird, so you could see a rainbird, but...
That is a rainbow.
It's hard for me. I mean, I zoomed all the way in, but it's really bright on the camera screen, so I don't know. Okay, yep, that's what you're referring to. Does anybody confirm that that is what that is? Like part of the water drench system? I don't want to read anybody's security badge with this camera, so we're going to zoom back out again. It does look like a rainbird. Thank you, studio. Ah, yes. All right. So, I'm going to switch back and forth between some chats here. And you know what I need to do? I need to actually log into my Twitch chat with another tool here. Give me just 1 second to get into chatty or whatever. So that I have like a persistent chat. I can only read one chat at a time, and I'm losing parts of the chat here. So, studio, do I need to be reading anything in Discord or anything, or are we good to go? I haven't checked that in a bit. I assume you would just tell me out loud if I needed to know something. Like, your camera's not pointed at anything. Alright, appreciate you. Where is my... There it is. Can y'all hear that, like, AC fan? It's the AC fan on these mobile construction buildings that you hear going wub 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 wub. All right. Okay, so we can zoom back out again. This over here still looks good. Is that still red? Yeah, that still looks red. Point this. Whoops! Whoa, not like that. Like that. You hear the wub wub wub. Okay, what's up, Shatter Mage? It's industrial dubstep. It's actually the mobile construction building things on the right hand side of the NASA spaceflight camera there. It's those fans in those construction buildings. Yes, Bandit, that is the electron pad. It's true. That is the electron pad right there next to it. It's almost impossible for me to see Antares from this position without also seeing electrons. So I'm just looking around. Wow, that's cool. Can we go up there? Really? Huh. Does this camera have the ability to zoom a bit? A little bit, Cult Rogue. It's a little bit difficult for me to do, but this is sort of what we got. Am I able to go closer to the pad? I could walk up to that fence line right there. I mean, here, I'm gonna get you as close to the RD-181s as we're allowed to get you, right? This is as close as it gets. Right there. I can't put the leg of the tripod inside, okay? So that's as close as you're gonna get right there. And then this is with the zoom, as close as you're gonna get to the bottom of those 181s. So that is that's the bottom of the RD-181s. And you can see that the octagonal reaction frame structure. I'm saying I think it looks like a reaction frame. It does not look like something that flies with Cygnus. Do you know? That's part of the pad, the brown reaction frame looking thing.
Like structural thing that's holding.
Yeah, yeah.
That's part of the. It's actually part of the.
It's part of the. It's part of the structure that moves it. Moves the rocket.
No, the strong back. It's
the strong back.
It's part of it, and then it bolts itself to the pad when it launches.
Gotcha.
It's not part of the rocket.
So they verticate it, and then that part is going to still be here after the rocket takes off. Yeah, gotcha.
Yes.
Oh, here, it's a nice fence. Yeah, there. Sorry, I'll point this way a little bit.
That's the flame trench for rocket.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, wow. That's the tiniest flame trench I've ever seen.
That railing might be happening.
Yeah. In the foreground of the shot, there is a. Is it over on the right-hand side? There's the big Antares flame trench. It's sort of a medium-sized flame trench. As flame trenches go. It's not like shuttle-sized or whatever, but it's not Rocket Lab-sized. You can see about 1/3 from the left hand of the frame. That's the Rocket Lab flame trench right there. That's tiny. It looks like one of those things you put a dumpster in out back behind the like community center or something. All right, so let me pop back over to the questions. Das, is this a USAF base or a NASA site? NASA Wallops is under NASA Goddard,
where
right?
we are right now is it's all owned by NASA Goddard, where Wallops is part of NASA Goddard.
Right.
But where we are right now is land leased from NASA by Virginia Space.
By the Virginia Space, which is Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, right?
The name is Mars, but the Virginia Space is like Virginia. It's actually a Virginia agency in charge of all this.
Right.
So it's leased.
Gotcha. Like an economic space development agency or something like that, right? Gotcha. You saw a strange phone box on my left. What is that for?
Or John.
I think you're talking about a porta potty over there, if I'm not mistaken. Is that what you're talking about? You're talking about the porta potty? How about this? I'm not going to zoom in on the porta potty. How's that strike you? So you got the two flame trenches there. I mean, whatever, I'll read it. What's the red and white tower you saw? A red and white tower. Do you see a red and white tower? I don't see a red and white tower. I see some warning lights, like keep out areas and stuff, but I don't see... All I hear is the industrial air conditioner wub wub right now.
Actually, I don't know how this is gonna last. The flame trench or this, you're
Yeah.
gonna whack right into this.
Towards this building.
And I don't know.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. I'm gonna scroll back up and see if I see some other things. How many times a year do they replace those lights near the launch pad? I wonder.
Well, it depends. The Rocket Lab ones, I don't know, but the Antares lightning catenaries that have, if they have any lights on the top of them,
Yep.
those were replaced during the orbital 3 launch explosion.
Gotcha.
2 of those, the 2 front ones, actually were collapsed.
Okay, I'm gonna zoom in on the top of a lightning catenary there. So that's the top of one of the lightning towers that protects the Antares rocket from lightning strikes. You get a thunderstorm, something like that going through. Now, how often do they have to replace or service that? I don't know the answer to that. Antares launches twice a year, nominally, right? So it doesn't get as much wear and tear as some other pads may. But if we go down there, I think you can see that other white structure is not part of it. There's 4 of the lightning towers. So there's the 4 lightning towers with the little claps on top of them, right? Did I get all 4? 1, 2, 3. There's the 4th one over there. Yeah, so the things with the little caps on the top, those are the lightning catenaries, the lightning towers. I don't actually know if those would be catenaries because they don't have cables between them. Yeah. Oh, jeez, yeah. But I can't tell you how often they have to change these lights, right? That's not a statistic that I know. Like, do they do something with him? Do the lights point in a different direction? Is it not that big of a deal because the flame trench points them off? Maybe they're high temperature rated lights. Like I don't know the answer to the duty cycle or the service periods on those lights. So I'm just gonna go ahead and point down at the bottom of the rocket again. You don't get to see that very often, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. How close can lightning hit before they scrub?
Well, I think any lightning, if it's heat lightning, I don't know, but if it's a thunderstorm, usually by that time, there most likely will be like cumulonimbus clouds around.
Right.
So they would know, oh, okay, there's lightning within like a certain radius of, I know at least at Kennedy, there's a certain radius, and it's far away, but they know it's coming, so they'll cancel it because it's a waste of.
Right.
Scrubbing actually does cost money when you scrub because you have to empty the tanks, you have to,
Recycle everything.
And that takes money and, hardware, so you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, but usually they wouldn't launch if it was in the area.
Yeah.
Unless it was
And
squirting.
I don't know the rules, like, 2 days in advance, the rocket's on the pad and one of the lightning towers takes a strike. Like, what are the rules about that? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I know that they they have measures to cover part of the rocket's facility or ground it. If there's, if it did hit, prevent like a complete, frying and everything, but they would most likely have to inspect it like a lot before they would let it launch.
Right. The industrial wub is getting to me, y'all. Like, is there anything we can see if we walk up that way on the fence? Do you want to go look? Look at this way. Yeah.
Pad 0B is to the left. So.
Yeah, but so I really can't look at Antares without getting the rocket lab, but turning around and looking at the other pads, I think I'm just going to keep doing this.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? Does it pour concrete into square shapes? How are you going to fit a round plume into a square tube? It expands to the size of its container. The Kerbal graphics mods are getting crazy.
And shiny.
And shiny. Oh, gosh. Let me see anything on YouTube. I'm switching back and forth between 2 different chats here. Is the fueling process the same like for Falcon 9? So Falcon 9 does the deep cryo. Rocket Lab. Antares.
Well, Antares is the second stage, so it's definitely all less. It's
Yeah.
all less than Falcon 9. I don't think there's wouldn't it all be load and go? Because they have to load it and because there's no people.
Yeah,
Well, no.
The second stage is already loaded because it's an SRB.
So you could say it's load and go. It's partial load and go.
Partial load and go. Nice.
Second stage is load and
Oh, so let me get some more questions here. That was the lightning question. You were talking about the toilet next to us because people who are building launch pads also have to go to the bathroom, much like astronauts in space also have to go to the bathroom. Not seeing anything else. So what I want to do, I want to move back over towards the bus and just get a little bit closer. So chat, you're going to come with us one more time, and we are going to walk one more time back over to the other side of things here because I don't want to be too terribly far away whenever it's time for us to go. So come with us. You have no choice. I can pick up the camera and make you come this way. And we'll just go get back over to the bus, and when they give us the old wave-a-rooney, we will hop on the bus and call it a day. But again, we are out here because the photographers are doing the remote camera setup, and they allow us to come out here. If there's a seat on the bus, we can come out and we can do some live streams and just show off different things about old Antares there. So this was probably the good shot
Money shot
of Antares. I'm trying to make it so that the logo is visible, but geez. All right, so there we go. We'll get back over to Antares. We'll zoom back in on Antares, and there you can see the whole shooting match, partially blocked by the black, the rusty sort of frame there. The 181's on the right-hand side. The first stage says Antares on it really big. The center part there, you see that black line that goes around up above the A, to the left of the A in Antares. That's where the Castor 30 XL, the Castor 30 XL says Northrop Grumman on it. To the left of that Northrop Grumman and the Castor 30 XL is the payload fairing that has Cygnus inside of it. And then to the left of that, the little room that's on scissor jacks, that is the mobile clean room where they do the late load for Antares. Whew.
It's a lot.
Did I get it all? I think I got it all.
This pad will not look as, the Rocket Lab pad will not look as clean, I can guarantee that in a year.
Yeah, yeah.
It looks all nice now.
Is this the first Antares launch since most of that structure's been there?
Well,
I actually don't know.
No. It started between NG-11 and NG-12. NG-12 was the first one with the Rocket Lab strong back.
Gotcha. So the last one had some stuff. Yeah, thanks.
I know NG-11 on their YouTube stream had the concrete base.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's right there. I'm on a NASA camera right there.
Oh, nice.
I noticed that.
That is cool. I like that camera. All right, y'all. So this is your last chance. If you have questions, is your camera going to be 4K slow-mo? No, for the live streams, we don't live stream in slow motion. It sort of fights against the live there. So because we're more about seeing the experience not live and not having a bunch of post-process, look at how slow this is, my deal is live video, and you don't live stream slow motion, right? So now this will be the video that we have, and then we have the source version that has no encoding and stuff like that. Well, that has no live stream encoding on it. That'll get uploaded as part of like a recap or something afterwards. But we stream in 720, and we will upload the 1080-60 in the end. We got the fueling process, we got that. Let me pop back over to Twitch chat, and I feel like we're starting to spool this down. Yeah, Mr. Failures, you're welcome to link up in Twitch. You're welcome to link up the YouTube stream. I'm running 2 different cameras. This camera was the like, hi, it's us camera, and that you're seeing on Twitch, and this camera that you see on YouTube is the nice interview G30-esque XA11 camera that we use to film this sort of stuff. So you're welcome to see either stream. You're welcome to link up the YouTube stream in my Twitch channel. If you want to see what's going on behind the scenes, sometimes when you don't have the NASA spaceflight shot here, I just have my cameras pointed back this way, and we're just sort of hanging out waiting for stuff to happen. Zoom in. Which one were you talking about, Shy? What were you wanting me to zoom in on? Fluid, okay, well, that's okay, you're talking about the square container again. Round plume and a square tube. And there's the YouTube link on my Twitch channel, Mr. Failures. So I'm just sort of leaving it at that level right now. And I believe coming up at 1:48. Anything else we haven't covered?
I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
I know Minotaur over on Pad B is going to be going off sometime this year.
Really?
Which is the first, if I'm correct, NRLL payload from Wallops.
Gotcha.
Well, at least in a long time, because they're usually Air Force missions on
Right.
Minotaur.
Right. Okay. Can you do a 360? Bob, not generally. We come out here to talk about Antares. Sure, we mention other rockets and stuff like that, but we typically keep our cameras pointed at Antares. Yeah, I walked over, I moved the camera a little bit. Yeah, from this perspective, it's almost impossible for me not to get some Rocket Lab pad in the shot. I don't know what the right way around that is, but we're not going to do a 360 there, because not with the big camera, because we're not here to film anything other than Antares. So appreciate you asking, but that's sort of the answer there. So, and if you're on my Twitch channel, I see people asking about the mission and tips. I'm out here on my own, hotels and stuff like that. I don't have like notifiers turned on or anything. So if you've done something like a tip to support me coming out and doing this stuff, I appreciate you, but I know that it hasn't popped a notifier or anything like that. So, anyways, yeah, Starspace. We were talking about zooming on the YouTube stream, which is using a different camera. Yeah, Mega Doomer, thanks for the Twitch sub there. I appreciate the Twitch sub. Ming Sauce is still talking about the square nozzle and round flame trench. Oh my gosh. If you live stream in fast motion, we can see into the future. Nice. And there were some workers walking around. You can sort of get a sense of scale if you see the workers walking around the rocket. And I wonder if they're working on like a camera there on the water tower, or, I mean, I don't know what they would be working on the side of the water tower there, you know?
There's a ladder there, so maybe they're fixing that up.
Yeah, I don't...
You get a camera?
Yeah, I can't. I don't know. You know something? Hang on. What is that? What do y'all think that is? Camera box? Some sort of sensor? Like, I will let... On YouTube, I've got the stream zoomed in, the camera zoomed in. Anybody have any idea what that might be? A little too bright for me to make it out. Zoop. Back down there. Oh, all right. It's impossible to live stream slow-mo. It breaks the laws of physics. I mean, I guess I could buffer it and just not play it back in real time. You know, you could be recording to a buffer in real time, but have something that's outputting that in slow motion, and then live stream the output in slow motion, but you wouldn't be seeing it in real time. Like if you were doing 120 FPS output at 30 FPS, every 1 second of the stream would be 4 seconds in real life, or other way around. Every 1 second in real life would be 4 seconds of stream. No, that's the wrong way. So, I mean, yeah, you could probably come up with some way to do it, but not today. Ah, yes. What's my Twitch channel? Mark Daniel. I'm at twitch.tv/DasValdez is where we got the, I say behind the scenes, but right now the camera is sort of pointing at the pad. I'll turn it back around here. We just have the sun very blatantly behind us here, but I believe we are probably getting to the point. Whoa. There you go. I'll try to block that sun with my hat here for you. But I think we're getting to the point where we're going to load back up on the bus. Here, when we load back on the bus, that's going to be the end of the NASA spaceflight coverage for the day. Wow, it looks like I have a halo if I do that. That's going to be the end of our live stream coverage. We had started out the day with the Atlas 411 roll for Solar Orbiter down at the Cape. Then we went out to Wallops. I was over at the HIF, outside of the HIF. And then we went back to Chris G, continuing with the Atlas rollout at the Cape again. Then we went back to us at the Wallops Visitor Center, back to Chris G at Titusville, talking about the history of the pads at Cape Canaveral. Back to us over here at Wallops at Pad 0A, looking at Antares again. And it leaves us about 28 hours away from the launch of Antares and about 30 hours from the launch of Solar Orbiter. Somebody can tell me exactly what the math is on that. But hopefully, if everything goes to plan, Wallops looking great. 95% go was the last thing I've seen. I don't know if that's been updated since I've been out here, but that was the update for Wallops. Anybody know Solar Orbiter? I actually do not know the go for Solar Orbiter, but I think it was pretty good.
I think it was 80.
Yeah, I don't think it was like 50. I don't want to jinx anything. It would be a fantastic, I'm just going to say accomplishment, if we get 2 different launches, 2 different US spaceports, 2 different missions, on the same day, on the same side of the country, so some of the same range assets in play, even where they have to hand off, or they're not needed on one mission, they're used for the other mission or whatever. So I know Chris G had a lot of really good information about the way that the range assets were going to work and why they could launch an Atlas from Cape Canaveral on the same day that they launch an Antares from here at Wallops. So anyways, I do think we are coming up on the end of our live stream here. I'm going to do one last read through here. Yeah, there's my Twitch channel. Hey, NASA, dude, NASASpaceflight, thanks for linking that up in there. Great work. Oh, thank you. Yeah, we've just been sort of hanging out. I know it's not the normal thing, but it's sort of cool to be able to get over here and see this stuff. Let me check Twitch chat as well. How long will you stream? Let me see here. How long will you stream before the launch? You stay live to the launch or a short time now? Come back later. Shy Gamer, the launch is tomorrow. It's 28 hours away. And so we are not going to stay live for 28 hours. But we just got the note that we need to go back to the bus. So it is time for me to shut down all the coverage here, both on the NASA Spaceflight YouTube channel and my own Twitch channel. They're waving at us, so I am going to say goodbye. Studio, if you can get us clear, I will see you nerds later. Remember, join us back for the launch of Antares here tomorrow, about 28 hours from now, 5:39 Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. Thanks again for watching. Later, nerds.